And we're live. What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us today. We are doing an Israel-Palestine call-in show. So excited to have you on. Soon we'll have Adam Becker join us. Those who are with us, let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. So Adam's joining in a few minutes. In the meantime, I haven't said much about Syria yet. People have asked me a fair bit, and I have just kind of been busy with other stuff, so haven't said much about it. So maybe we'll start with a short little segment on Syria. I see we have Adam here, so let's bring Adam in. Boom. Adam, what's up?
Boom. We're starting with Syria? Oh, man.
Well, I thought it would take you longer to show up, so I figured in the meantime, because people have asked, but who knows? Syria might be old news by now. You know? Maybe just like a very high level, because there's been so many analyses so far, but I think that there is a great opportunity for a brighter future for Syria. I would say I'm hopeful but not optimistic, right? Many longtime viewers of the show know that I always talk about how I believe terrorists can reform and moderate, and it seems like al-Julani is a perfect example of that. But he was an al-Qaeda terrorist just a few years ago. So is it possible that he modernized for international legitimacy, or does he really see things differently? Again, hopeful, not super optimistic. Damn, why do I always get calls right on stream? The thing is, I don't even know how to shut that off. Like I click out of WhatsApp, it comes back, but whatever. Let me ping him real quick. So hold on. Damn, it interrupted my flow of thought. But so
you're saying maybe it was like for international legitimacy?
Oh, yeah. Now, the way al-Julani is speaking, I mean, he's speaking like a progressive. Like he's far to the left of Netanyahu and Trump and people like that. Like he's almost woke the way he's speaking, which is fascinating. Is this like a new? Will he be the new face of Islam or of progressive Islam? That's possible that he might really stick to it and do something truly revolutionary in Syria. But I could also see it being just another, missed opportunity, and it becomes a nation that has like a heavy Islamist leaning. That's not great for the minority groups living in Syria. It's not good for women living in Syria. So I see that as a very real possibility. I am eagerly waiting to see what happens. Adam, is there anything you'd like to
What
share?
do you think about there's been a lot of like cynicism about Israel's response to the fall of Assad. I know that this has been now
sure.
in the coming, but
that's
what do you share the cynicism? Is Israel blameworthy in its actions? Is it opportunistic in a rational way, in an irrational way, in a dangerous way? Like, how would you parse it?
Yeah, it's something I've thought about quite a bit, and I'll start by saying I don't think this is as bad as Israel's conduct in Gaza, because we're not seeing massive amounts of civilians being killed from Israel strikes in Gaza. I cry a bit less when military infrastructure gets destroyed than when children get blown up. Right? It's a different. It just has a different calculation in my mind. That said, and I can understand why Israel is opportunistically weakening the Syrian army, essentially destroying the Syrian army, because they don't know what al-Julani will ultimately do. So opportunistically, they're doing it. I do, however, think that they are decreasing the chance that we have good relations with this future Syrian government. We're starting our relationship with them on the wrong foot. And I believe that almost all the strikes that we did in Syria could have been done after, if we saw things are not going well. Like, I think we often have this approach of strike first, diplomacy second, and I would like to see it be diplomacy first and foremost, aggression as an absolute last resort, and that's just currently not how Israel functions and how much of the world functions. So, yeah, I can understand why Israel did that. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, but I'm not supportive of it. I think it's a strategic mistake. I think we should wait to see before engaging with them. And at the very least, if we're going to do that, we should extend an olive branch simultaneously and say, hey, we're just doing this because we don't know what the instability, what will occur, but we do want good ties with you. Like if that was their approach, I feel like it would have been much better. But it's just like, okay, let's.
Do you think it might be? Do you think there's like a
behind the scenes?
Yeah, like do you think we might even like would we even know about it? I guess they could do it very publicly, right? They could just
they could do it publicly to kind of that would push away some of the criticism that Israel's received from this. But yeah, and interestingly, like Al-Jilani was very mature about it, right? He reported to the UN Security Council, like he just filed an official report, like a leader of a country would do. So I found that to be commendable. A few things though that give me a little bit less optimism is Al-Jilani stands for from the Golan. So his family's actually from the Golan Heights. And Hayat al-Sham, HTS, means the Organization for Liberation of the Levant. The Levant includes Israel and Palestine. So the name of his organization and his last name kind of point to a more expansionist mindset. But who knows? Who knows? Maybe it's nothing.
Yeah, it's hard to know what kind of branding you have to just sort of like convey in order to gain legitimacy. But once you have that legitimacy, what you're actually going to do.
Yeah, I mean, I would personally feel vindicated if he continues to be like a moderate, because I keep saying that terrorists could reform, and I would like a very recent case study of an Islamist who became like a liberal. It would be able to inspire our imagination for what's possible in the Middle East.
But Adar, could it be that instead of maybe like even the framing of reform is like the problem here? Like maybe it isn't that they can reform, but that they are simply they're simply using the best tool for the job insofar as they think that is the best tool for the job. And as soon as the other tools are more readily available, they'll use those, right? Like do you think the terrorists...
Like you're saying it might just be a front. That's the perception.
No, not front. It's just that like maybe terrorism was very useful to get to position A, and now to get from A to B, terrorism isn't useful. It's not like you're committed to a tactic. You're just deploying a tactic when that is the most strategic deployment possible.
You know, what you're saying is very in line with what we've seen historically, where terror organizations will become moderate once certain goals of theirs are achieved, right? Like the IRS, like the PLO, like the Israeli government. You know, like we all started as these militias that engaged in terrorism that reformed to a large extent once we achieved our goals. So yeah, I think that's. But so what goal was reached? Because they
it's just that like what kind of, I mean, could he have gained power non-terroristically?
Well, so I think he did to a large extent. What happened was the rebels seemingly lost the war, like 10 years of a very bloody civil war. Assad seemingly won. And then out of the blue, and you know, this was very opportunistic. It was when Hezbollah was at their weakest and Iran was weakened, and Russia's been caught up in war for 3-4 years now. But for the past 4 years, Al-Jilani's kind of just building up forces, consolidating power. He kind of kicked out he kicked out ISIS and Al-Qaeda from northeast Syria. He modernized his military, I think primarily with the help of Turkey, but really modernized the military, and then modernized his tactics. When they took over Syria this time around, there was close to no blood shed. And I think we don't still have the full story, but it seems like they bribed a lot of high-level officials to stand down, and they caused the Syrian army, the victorious Syrian army, to collapse in a week. I mean, that is brilliant maneuvering that caused very few civilian
I
deaths.
guess that proves the point then.
Right. It was a masterful.
Yeah, Adar, so this seems to then demonstrate the point, right? Where when terrorism isn't the most effective tool, perhaps they choose not to. Even terrorists, sworn terrorists, they're not swearing by terrorism as the end-all, be-all of all tactics. They're just saying that's the tactic that seems necessary for scenario A. And then as soon as scenario B shows up, they switch tactics.
Yes, I think, yeah. So what's possible is after they lost, Al-Jilani's like, I'm praying 5 times a day. We still lost. What the fuck is this bullshit? It's not about praying. It's about weaponry. It's about science and technology. I'm doing a full 180 on it. Yeah, it's
gotta iterate.
Yeah.
No, like even
the beard took off the headscarf. You know, he.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you could think how that would be a blow to your faith if you're an Islamist and you lose to a secular nationalist like Assad. You're like, what's going on here? You know.
But I think it also just means that the swearing off of terrorism might always be opportunistic, because you might then pick it up the moment you do see that it's more of a viable option again, right? Like, I think that's the question. Like, is it always the case that terrorism doesn't work? And can you imagine a scenario where leaders decide to pick it up the moment they've exhausted other options, or the moment they just think that this is the best option? Right. So like, it's not that he's sworn, it's not that he had like a come to Jesus moment, right? And he's like, oh my God, I regret having chosen, terrorism. It might just be like, okay, cool. Now we don't need to use terrorism. Terrorism isn't getting us what we need. But in the future, maybe terrorism does, in which case he'll pick it up again.
Yeah. I see that as a certain possibility. I think we could only speculate so much about like his intentions, but he very well may also be an opportunist. He could have been radicalized by U.S. invasion of Iraq. That's when he joined Al-Qaeda to fight the U.S. in Iraq. He saw that as an opportunity. He might have not even come from like a religious perspective. It could have been more like get off our land kind of thing. Right. But Al-Qaeda is a religious organization, so he was religious to kind of work his way up, and now he sees I don't know. We could speculate all day, but yeah, I guess.
I have a question. Do you have like a question or a thing? Yeah.
Yeah. Before you ask the question, I just want to give a little bit more. So we've already introduced you a few times to the community, but I want to give another introduction. Whoever doesn't know Adam, and I don't know if you saw it, I called you Adam Becker Habibi on this one.
I saw that. Now I'm trying to change my name to map onto that one. I don't know how, but it's okay.
So that's technically his name, but it's pulling a grandma's maiden name, right, from Egypt.
My mom's
maiden name.
Actually, that one, my grandma's from Egypt. My grandpa is from Persia, and it's the Persian side.
Now, you all will be seeing Adam more on stream. Adam and I recently co-founded a new company called headon.ai, which is essentially a platform that scales what we do right here. We're scaling contentious conversations using AI. Now, maybe we could get a little bit deeper in it. Adam can tell you the story of how he even came up with this idea. But I think he has a very unique perspective and important voice on this conflict. And he once said to me, he said, I don't really think I'm smart. I think I've just really worked very hard to learn the stuff. And he wasn't giving himself enough credit, because he is both smart, but he has done the work. So one of the biggest contrasts between Adam and I is how much we've actually, and I say this with a bit of shame, but he's read like hundreds of books on the conflict, whereas I'm more of like, I've learned through the conversations. I'll read like articles, summaries of books, have never done nearly as deep of a dive as he has. So we really have on with us somebody who has studied the conflict deeper than almost everybody. And you'll also notice, which you may have noticed already from the first 10 minutes, that Adam's very good at asking questions. This is something that I myself know I need to improve on and can learn from Adam. So I'm acknowledging that. And we're going to start doing probably one stream together every week. So get used to us as a duo, the dynamic. We'll do stuff where we ask each other questions, challenge one another, bring on guests. We're just going to have fun with it. But
Nice.
happy to welcome Adam to the platform.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Adar, and thank you everybody else who's tuning in. And you're very kind and gracious. I hope it was hundreds. I don't think it was hundreds, but I've certainly spent a lot of time reading, and I'm definitely very.
Look at the bookshelf behind you.
Yeah, I think that it's. Oh man, most of my books are in LA. I hope that they're surviving the fires. I do want to say though that, and I'd mentioned this before. I think like virtually probably every time that I speak to you, I have never heard anybody speak about this topic in the way that you do, right? So you have been an inspiration in how, and also just a very kind of like clear. It is almost like I see the boundaries and the limitation of just like reading books. When you don't have the kind of like disposition of actually putting them to productive use in the way that I feel like you have and that you have shown others how to do. And I hear that this, you probably don't talk about this on the show much, but I have at this point met a lot of people who have just confessed to me the impact that listening to the show and listening to you has had on them. So
really,
yeah, and so I'm very, yeah, it's there's more and more of them, but I think that insofar as we are able to kind of, and I think you alluded to this a couple of streams ago, it's like somehow train the AI with, I spoke to this with somebody that I met the other day, and she has run organizations that facilitate conversations between Israelis and Palestinians and people in the Arab world and the Western world for many years. Must have had thousands, if not tens of thousands, of conversations under her belt. She saw you in one of the conversations that we've had kind of internally at Head On. And immediately she wrote me a message and she said, how do we get an AI to learn from Adar and from how Adar is doing it? So it's very likely that the next generation of facilitators, interrogators, are gonna maybe interlocutors would be like the best word here is like would learn from your kind of like dispositions. So with that in mind, I have a question.
And I think that's why we're going to create a good partnership dynamic. And by the way, just on this note, you and I met through this channel. I think that's also important to mention. Adam is actually my first patron ever. The first financial supporter I ever had from content was Adam. He reached out to me asking if I have a Patreon and how he could send me money, and then we kind of stayed in touch. And then he filled me in on what he's working on with Head On, and I got extremely excited and expressed interest in helping out however I can. And then he essentially invited me to join him and be his co-founder. So here we are, and it's beautiful how friendship through a live stream can lead to us potentially building transformative technology. Time will tell, right? In order to be a successful entrepreneur, you need to be delusional. So we're both delusional enough to know for certain that we're going to succeed against all odds. But to ground ourselves in reality, it's a tall task with no guarantee of success, and it will require immense amount of work, a fair bit of luck, and the help of the community. So that's kind of where we're at, and we're gonna do a lot more in the public, talking about the process, how we're building it, what we're learning along the way. Currently, there's certain things that the AI is going to learn from me, but very soon I won't have much to teach it anymore, and I'm going to be learning from it, and I'm excited for that day, for the day where I get to learn from this intelligence that I initially helped contribute to. So exciting.
I can even show you, man. There's some like new designs that we've been working on last night. I don't know if people want to see it or if you want to see it. You and I haven't gotten a chance to sync up on it yet, but maybe towards the end if there's time.
Yeah. Let's finish the stream. Yeah, sure. Let's do that. We're gonna drop a link because we are doing a call-in show. But yeah, we'll end it with some design and product stuff. I'm excited to see it myself. I just dropped the link for anybody who wants to join. Adam, we have a question for you. Jelano is asking, what is Adam's high-level view of the conflict leaning Israel or Palestine?
I think the high level view is just the framing. I think Adar, you and I had been speaking about this now for years. So it's likely that either I got this from you or somehow it made it into the show. But the perspective I have is, I think, fairly simple. I take these almost as these two axioms of solving this conflict. The first is the Arabs in the region, the Palestinians, must be free. There's no denying that. They need to be free as everybody else in the world, as the Frenchman and as an American. They have to be free. The Jews in the region have to be safe. Both of those have to be true. That, I think, is kind of like the requirement that I have for a solution. How you make that true, I don't care. It could be 0 state, 1 state, 2 state, 1,000 states. However you guarantee that is fine. The problem I often see is that people focus on only one part of this equation. And I don't think that you can focus on one part and be productive here. That's my take. My take is that in order to make the Jews safe, the Palestinians have to be free. And in order for the Palestinians to be free, the Jews have to be safe. We are both holding the key to each other's destiny. And when we only focus on our own interests and not that of the others, we're actually doing ourselves a disservice. So which way do I lean? I think that's probably as close an answer as I can give you. Now, I could then zoom into various historical episodes and be like, were they right in this? Were they wrong in this? We could play that game, but that's the highest level.
Awesome. I think a lot of people will be nodding their heads and be like, okay, I can see why they get along. Yeah. You mentioned, David, I see we have you here. We'll bring you on in a moment. Adam, I noticed you said, you didn't say Palestinians, you said Arabs. I know you're not saying that as a rejection of Palestinian national identity, because I've known you long enough. But yeah. What was your thought process behind the use of that word?
I said both of them, right? I was like, Arabs in the region, Palestinians. So insofar as Arabs in the region want to identify as Palestinians, many of them do, most of them do, not all of them do. They're free to do it. They could identify however they wish. But Arabic-speaking residents of the region and the Hebrew-speaking ones. So however they define, I'm not that interested in that level. I think that's an interesting kind of sociological question. Why do people define themselves?
Wait, I guess what I'm wondering, was this your way to include Israeli Arabs in the equation, or Lebanese and Syrians?
I think there are gradations there where it becomes a little bit more difficult to say the extent to which Syrians need to be free in order for the Jews to be safe.
Right.
I'm not really sure about going that far.
But Israeli Arabs, aka Palestinian citizens of Israel. Okay.
Yeah, and not all of them define themselves to be Palestinian. I think there's I think that the surveys show that more and more of them, but not all of them. So I want to give a space for them too.
Awesome. David, we're going to bring you on. David, we have our resident Jewish anti-Semite here. I'm just fucking with you. Look, David, I've known him long enough that I could crack that joke. David actually goes into the lion's den more than anybody else. There's not a single Jew who has spoken to more anti-Semites. I know David prefers the term counter-Semite, but there's nobody who's spoken to more a Jew that's spoken directly to more anti-Semites on their platforms than David. So I know I started it with a jest, but I want to give you credit where credit's due. And I meant no hard feelings by that remark. David, what's on your mind?
Yeah, well, at this day, I say no, there are more, because I haven't really done it much recently. And there's a lot more. And most of the ones I spoke with were the intellectuals. So there's a lot of low level or just different things. Now there's JQ TV, which is 24/7. There's a lot more of them. And there was Yehuda Amslug, Mario Nuffel. There became a lot more Twitter spaces since it moved on Twitter. I would say there's hundreds of Jews that talk with anti-Semites, counter-Semites all day. But I got in it when it was still centralized, and I was able to speak to the major ones, the scholars, the people that actually had, we'll say, severe intellectual anti-Semitic, counter-Semitic critiques, as opposed to nowadays your mass of just anti-Semitic people.
I have so many questions for you. David, you guys, had you already gone back and forth on the show? I might not have seen it.
Yeah. We had David and I once had a debate on this. Yeah.
I'm like Adam Green. I still speak with Adam Green. Like Albert Bashai, but like Twitter completely changed the game. Even like I assume you see your numbers are probably down on YouTube. It's became decentralized. Like if you've considered, like streaming to all the platforms and where you stream to like 10 different platforms. And
yeah, this is currently on Twitter as well, by the way. But yeah,
so this is like Rumble, or the more extreme content is on other platforms, and the main actions in Twitter Spaces. Not streaming to Twitter, but the actual Twitter Spaces. And I also seen a shift where there was a period where they wanted to speak to Jews, and like, okay, like me or you, there weren't really that many Jews who were interested in doing it. Now there's a lot bigger group where they just don't talk to Jews anymore. They feel like there's no reason to talk. And so you have huge echo chambers of maybe full anti-Semites, because at the point you had like intellectuals that were talking and had criticisms. Now you actually have activists.
Right. So let me just and maybe elaborate on this, but the distinction you make between anti-Semite and counter-Semite, an anti-Semite is somebody who actually just hates Jews. Like they think we're in an inferior race, our blood is dirty, etc., etc. While a counter-Semite is somebody who just has concern over the extent of Jewish power and how they may have a different vision for the country, like an insular ethnic group has a different vision for the country than the average American. Is that a fair description of the difference between anti-Semite and counter-Semite?
Well, counter-Semites will usually insist they're not anti-Semitic. So like you spoke to quite a few people and like you might be like, well, even though you claim you're not anti-Semitic, I think you're anti-Semitic. But just the question, like, well, why do they claim they're not anti-Semitic, even if you might say they are? And usually it's because they're looking at like a group strategy and just saying like, well, Jews are doing these bad things, and I don't mind Jews as individuals. I just mind what they're doing. And they have criticisms and reasons, and you could argue about the reasons. If you want to say that like there's anti-Semites, they just hate Jews. They don't think there's any advantage that could be gained to talking with Jews, or that Jews could even be changed. So like if a person was willing to talk to you, he's probably not an anti-Semite.
David, okay. Do you have a sense of like a geographical distribution of like the counter-Semites and the anti-Semites around the world?
Well,
like the ones that are like active online that you're likely to have come across.
Well, before there was a rise of anti-Semitism in America in the last few years, if you take that narrative or understanding, you had intellectuals that criticized Jews, wrote books on it, read Jewish books, had their, like Kevin McDonald, E. Michael Jones, maybe like Richard Spencer, or largely in the alt-right. And after but you didn't really have any activists. Like these guys were regular, so to say, people that you might not know they had these views. And there was internet chat rooms or occasional like gatherings, like, but they weren't like neo-Nazis. They weren't part of any actual group. They just had these ideas, and most of the counter-Semites were white, and they thought that Jews were against like immigration and multicultural America, and they largely blamed Jews as the key leader in it. So like now that is, I mean, there are also like the people like Israel policy and foreign policy, but I say like now that's completely changed with like the war. I mean, actually, like if you think the Goyim Defense League, that was one of the first ones to switch. Actually, there was before Patrick Little that switched from online to street activity. So like the Goyim Defense League, if you had run-ins with them, they used to come into your chat and there'd be like 100 of them, and like they'd keep active, or he'd even ask for the link and argue with you. And then they switched to flyers, and then they switched to protesting synagogues. And
but David, can I sorry to jump in, but
well, I was doing it before it escalated to when it was basically just debating on the internet. So like I would say, even the people that I debated on the internet, besides for Handsome Truth, and I, he just like, none of those people were activists that like protested Jews.
Right. But like I'm trying to figure out like how big a problem this is, because I know that a lot of people would have a sense of like, all right, fine, so there's a few of them online, even there's a couple out in the street, but really it isn't a problem. But maybe for the Jewish community, the Jews keep thinking it's a problem, and so they speak about it. But really, in the grand scheme of things, if you look at absolute numbers, it is a non-issue. Can you give us a sense of how big an issue it actually is?
There's, just on that note, there's been some concerning data about Gen Z and like sympathy with Hitler and questions about the official narrative around the Holocaust that I saw recently. So I think it's actually a bigger problem than we might think it is. The question is, what actually is the result of that?
Do you not read the report? I've said like Jewish organizations like do surveys and reports. I mean, like the ADL numbers generally, for a baseline for the last 30 years, 10% of America was, they called like fully anti-Semite, and it means that 6 of the 10 questions that they considered anti-Semitic, like do Jews have due loyalty, like there's 10 questions that they consider anti-Semitic tropes, and if you agree more than 6 of them, you're an anti-Semite. So historically, that was like 10% of Americans. In the last year, it was 25% of Americans. And like, if you consider like, do Jews have more loyalty to Israel than America? Over half of Americans on the last survey said yes. So if you're going to say like, well, if you think a Jew has more loyalty towards their fellow Jew than to America, then over half of America is anti-Semitic. And then versus like the polling of college campuses, the younger generation sentiment towards Israel, towards even stronger statements like, should the Jews be expelled from America? Like, God forbid, like these are just polling that inserting younger graphics, you could have like 10% of Americans that would even consider something like, yeah, the Jews got to go. And then you have like the question of violence or institutional. And like, I mean, I'm happy to talk about this, but I wanted to come on and talk about Israel because I think we have the worst impending disaster. And I would say at the highest level, you actually have the most philo-Semitism probably in the history of America. And, I think Trump, in terms of the war, I wanted to ask you guys what you think Trump means when all hell's going to break loose, or Trump just says to Israel, do what you want. What's Israel going to do? But I think at the highest level, it's actually the opposite. You have, and that's part of the problem. The problem is that there's the disconnect. And, if you're going to blame Jewish lobby, Jewish effort for why that is the case, why is it that politicians, Congress, media is so philo-Semitic, but the base of America is, the numbers are astronomical. If you read any of the surveys, you could say it's double or triple just in the last few years. And what would most people would consider anti-Semitic, whatever Adam Green was saying a few years ago, where it was really an anomaly. You had to seek out to talk to those guys. Although, people in America, but now, 1 out of 4 people will say that.
Right. So real quick, just at least my thoughts, like what I'm seeing on Twitter, anti-Semitism has been normalized to a degree I have not seen in my lifetime. So I personally have decided I'm going to focus on it more. It'll be Israel-Palestine stuff, and conversations with anti-Semites will be the primary. It's going to be just next topic I start to heavily focus on. And when I see the extent of the activists who have the largest platform speaking out against anti-Semitism, I think their approach has been, for the most part, counterproductive. I think it just fans the flames of hate rather than trying to somehow bridge this divide. And I want to acknowledge that there's some anti-Semites that will never be convinced, but there's a lot of people that are getting radicalized in front of our eyes through the content that they're viewing. So I think there's actually benefit to having conversations and exposing a new set of ideas to people who are on the fence who have recently been radicalized. So I got an invitation recently to do an interview with one of the most popular anti-Semites today. I don't want to drop the name until it's confirmed, but it looks like I'm going to agree to that opportunity because I see this as an important conversation to have. Now, another thing I want to put out there is we've seen time and time throughout history that anti-Semitism starts with rhetoric and dehumanization and eventually leads to violence. That's been pretty consistent. So I want to make that clear before what I'm about to say is that right now we see record levels of anti-Semitism, but I don't feel the material effect of it. Like, it's not changing my life in any way. I meet people from all around the world, and some of these people I'm meeting in person might actually be classified as anti-Semites, but face to face, they treat you like any other human. So I'm not saying it won't lead to violence. It very well may. But so far, what I'm seeing is an explosion of anti-Semitism online. I'm not yet feeling it impacting my life negatively. And again, this
becomes.
I don't know if other people if you guys feel similar things.
Well, because I don't think anti-Semitism is just a belief. You could be a speech, it could be a thought pattern, but now, especially with the war and the encampments, you've reached a period of activism, and there's some level of, like, most of probably what we focused on when you consider anti-Semitism, you're referring to whites, and because like in the general American culture, like really only whites could be anti-Semitic in the belief pattern. And then you have like the but I mean, even regardless, if you say you're not looking at it that way, like critical race theory, or anybody could be anti-Semitic if they have the belief pattern. We've reached the age of activism, and so like if you look, okay, Nick Fuentes switched at some point to activism, conferences, trying to run politicians, although he was largely ceding territory. Like, okay, like we got to move out of the cities. We can't win in the urban areas because they're fighting for white interests. So anti-Semitism is just one of their platforms for trying to like maintain a white America. And almost all those people recognize that they're going to lose the urban areas, and almost all Jews live in urban areas. So whites are not really a danger to us. But I don't know if you just look at the the differentiation. If okay, let's say a guy's a verbal activist, he runs a space, he runs his mouth all day. Is that different than an activist that's now actually creating groups, expanding groups, recruiting people, and then what's the difference between so to say like the white ones that have very little intersection with Jews because they live in red areas, and like the Palestinian anti-war movement, or different sentiment among different minorities that are more likely to be our direct neighbors, and whether they're activists or not. And then usually, is it a person that their only issue is Jews, or if you're looking at a person like Fuentes or something like that as a whole, or whole host of issues, and Jews is just one of them.
Yeah, David, I have maybe another question here. Do you think that in either case, whether or not it's just like a single platform kind of like anti-Semitism, or if it's just being used as like a tool to mobilize more people for your cause, do you think that in some ways there is kind of like a limit to how bad it can get in the US, because American society is inoculated to like the worst forms of anti-Semitism because there are so many Jews, and they're somewhat well integrated. That is, virtually every family has, if not many friends that are Jewish, might even have relatives that are Jewish. So it's like it's a little bit less balkanized or segregated than it might have been in other societies. Do you think that might be one example? And are there other examples for why the US is like uniquely inoculated?
Well, it's political because like I read surveys. I'm a numbers guy. Maybe Adam is too, but like that's not accurate. Like half of Americans have never met a Jew. So you're like 90% of Jews live in 5 urban areas. Just like LA, New York, Chicago, Baltimore, maybe Boston, Miami. That's 90% of like all the Jews in America. And like in red states, like if you look at the actual red areas, there's probably only a few 100,000 Jews spread out over all of red America. And then you also have the minority factor, where Jews almost never, almost always live, right next to African American communities or in minority communities. Like if you're in LA, you might have more Hispanics, but like, if you look at like Los Angeles is like 20 to 25% whites, and like of the whites, if you count Jews as whites, Jews are like 1/4 of white people in urban areas, even like New York City. Like of the whites that are in New York City itself, like Jews are like 25% of all the whites in New York City. And the Jewish neighborhoods, like there's a few of like the very nice Jewish neighborhoods that might be in the still larger white area, but you have the multiculturalism aspect, and then like the different, like, okay, African American crime, violence, anti-Semitism that affects certain, like the biggest population of Jewish areas, like the Jewish areas, Orthodox areas, or the main Jewish places where people aren't integrated. Versus if you look, I don't know where in America you lived or your background, but you say where Jews were integrated, you're talking like a neighborhood that's maybe 20% Jewish, but it's probably multicultural. And I think that multicultural aspect is what changes the dynamic of anti-Semitism. And you have the red areas that are still like 90% white. Those are the people that, like, half of those people have literally never met a Jew their whole life.
Never met a Jew. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Fascinating.
So Adam, real quick, we did like 60% anti-Semitism, 30% Syria. We're slacking on the Israel-Palestine side of things.
Oh yeah.
So if you have one more thing on this topic, by all means, but then I do want to shift it over. And I know Dovey does have some thoughts on Israel-Palestine. And Altoids, I see you here in the waiting room. We will have you on in a few minutes.
Let's shift Israel-Palestine.
That was the main thing I wanted to talk about, because I streamed weekly, and I stopped streaming because like all I was doing was bashing Israel, and it's saying like I had a small audience of people, but like I would have like 10, 20 people tuning in to hear me bash Israel, and like the majority of them were counter-Semitic. And like, with the war, it was just like week after week, it was like, and so I stopped streaming. I still occasionally talk to people or will do content-based stuff that has nothing to do with politics, just my interest. And then, I also went to like Palestinian, the encampment at Wayne State University, or a few events, but that died out. Like they quashed that. They arrested a lot of the protesters, and there's still a few protests, but I would say the protest movement has largely been quashed. There's still a few protests here and there. There's still organizations, and it seems like we'll say like the Zionists, the justifiable war, or that America should back the war, has largely won, at least on the policy side. And now Trump is going to be in office in 2 weeks. And he has been making extremely strong-handed statements. Just yesterday, he brought out Steve Witkoff or something, this billionaire, and he was like, it's going to be hell. And he's like, what do you mean by that? He refused to answer, but he's like, it can be hell. Like, release the hostages. And say, what possibly, if you look at as America, Israel, because I'm still live in a Jewish neighborhood, like IRL, even I talk to people online, like, half the people I know are Jews. I live in a black neighborhood, but it's saying like, what are we going to do that we haven't done already? When Trump gets into office and gives the green light to Israel, I mean, if you look, you call it genocide, ethnic cleanse, however bad it is, 40,000, 50,000 dead. Is it possible that we're going to kill hundreds of thousands of people once Trump gets into office? Is like, if someone anti-war activist and just saying like that fear level, not only the fear like a Palestinian or a protester, but as a Jew, I would say like, I'm scared as a Jew that we're going to kill hundreds of thousands of people over the next few months. Do you share that fear? And then if not, like, what do you think Trump's going to do that they haven't done already? It just means starvation?
I personally can see it going both ways, because Trump certainly might just give Netanyahu the green light to do whatever he wants. But I could also see him putting more pressure on Netanyahu. Like, I could see a situation where he does a little bit of a deeper dive into the hostage negotiations and realizes there's a way to get the hostages back, but it would require ending the war. And in his mind, he would see that as, let's just take the deal. Why are we continuing the fight? Right? Because there's a hostage deal on the table. It just requires ending the war. up until now have not agreed to end the hostages only for the war to continue. That's really their primary leverage these days. So I could see Trump coming in and kind of flipping the script and kind of being harder on Netanyahu because he's just so unpredictable. But just yesterday on Truth Social, he shared a video. Was that a video by David Sachs, I believe, who he was giving this impassioned speech. And in the speech, he's saying how the only reason we went to Iraq was because of Netanyahu. He fooled the U.S. into fighting that war. Trump shared this on his Truth Social profile. So people were shocked that he would share a video like that. Maybe he wasn't aware. Maybe, there's speculation as to why he shared that. But I don't know. And a few weeks ago, they asked him, do you trust Netanyahu? He said, no, I don't trust anybody. I only trust myself. It's a very Trump answer, but I'm not sure I could really see it going both ways. So I do have that concern, but I'm not certain it'll go in that direction.
Were you separating, saying like, okay, that might refer to Iran, but Trump has made no sympathies towards Palestinians. And if you took like the war goal in terms of getting back the hostages, the goal was to defeat Hamas. And he's saying, okay, Trump said it in returns to the hostages. He was like, he's got 2 weeks till he's in office, release the hostages or else. So there's, the question is like, okay, separate the question of Iran or the U.S. helping Israel with that to just, giving carte blanche to Israel to do whatever it wants in Gaza.
No, but are you concerned that maybe Trump will give them like a green light, and then the IDF will just go and just firebomb the rest of Gaza and just destroy it even more so than it's been destroyed and kill everybody indiscriminately? Like, what is the fear?
I don't know. And that's why I was thinking, like, what could they do that they haven't done already? And I think Israel's too casualty adverse to send in the troops to eliminate Hamas. So really all they could do is bomb, or all they could do is increase the bombing, which, President Biden was holding up, or do a complete siege of starvation. And if Trump allows it, saying like, okay, starve them, go ahead. Or bombing if Biden was holding back in like the 2,000-pound bombs, and President Trump is like, bomb them as much as you want, you can have however many bombs you want, he's not going to say anything, you want to starve them. I don't know what Israel would do. I'm scared like I've already been using the G word, even if for 40,000 people, relative, it's just a word, but I'm scared that they might, Israel might either directly through starving or just bombing. If Trump says, okay, here's 5,000-pound bombs, do what you want, or he's not going to hold any punches. President Trump already said he's willing to disband the ICC, or these various statements. So, I mean, I don't know if Adam served in the IDF also, but if Trump did get, regardless of the Iran claims or what's happening in Lebanon or Syria, but like if Trump just said whatever you want in Gaza, it's up to you. Whatever weapons you want, you can have it.
David, are you under the impression that it might be beneficial for, let's say, Netanyahu to end the war very quickly, or to try to induce the kind of suffering on the Palestinians that will end the war quickly, or that will bring
the Mersheimer that there is no way to end the war. The only way to end the war is ethnic cleansing or giving the Gaza. I think it's basically either or. Like either Zionism has to be given up on, and Israel has to just absorb and give full citizenship, or they have to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians. I don't think there's any.
That's. Are you saying to end the war or to end the conflict? The conflict, because it sounds like you're giving an answer to the conflict.
Yeah, I'm saying to end the. Well, I mean, Israel could maybe do the half measure that looks like they might be doing, where they're just going to have the buffer zone, put the wall back up, take a little bit of the territory, split it up, and that they're going to allow Hamas to retake over Gaza. And, Hamas is already sending rockets back into Israel, and then the siege will continue. So basically, be a return to the status quo with Hamas running Gaza. I'm saying that's probably the most likely option. So if Israel, I assume at all costs, does not want that to happen. And so, it's like long term, the only way to end the conflict is, Adar, I learned from his channel, the Confederate, some form of one-state solution, giving them full citizenship, if it's, however that would work out. And unfortunately, and I think from the Israeli perspective, the most logical choice for the future of Israel is ethnic cleansing. That's kind of what scares me, because what's to prevent if Trump? I mean, are you scared that they might just go for it? Saying like, now's their chance, let's do it, ethnic cleansing.
Yeah, again,
invading Egypt, God forbid, it could mean killing people, or it would have to mean probably like invading Egypt in order to force them into the Sinai Peninsula. I don't know exactly how.
So maybe that's why Egypt. Maybe that's why we've seen an increased military presence, Egyptian military presence in Sinai. They broke whatever the treaty, and they've actually put troops and military in Sinai. A lot of them are. A lot of what they're building is anti-invasion, like ditches and what's the terminology? I don't recall, but yeah, they're literally building
to prevent that from happening. But I presume that Israel, like if they really wanted, they could probably break through Egypt's defenses and force the Palestinians into the Sinai.
Yeah, for sure. If they wanted to, can I see that happening? I can, but again, I could also see it. I could also see the war ending quicker, and I could see Trump pressuring Netanyahu for a hostage deal. I don't even know what percentage to put it at, but
just return to the status quo.
Yeah, to be honest, I feel like the thing that I have seen is just almost a complete lack of vision on the point of view of the Israeli government in all of its manifestations, right? All of the different Knessets. I have not seen any like resolve to do anything to address the conflict in like a systematic way. I don't know that. I think that they're just kind of stuck. They don't know what to do, and I can't really imagine that all of a sudden they'll wake up and be like, okay, the solution is X. We're all executing towards X. I'm not seeing that. So yeah. I think they will just continue to be kind of like, I think they will just organically or kind of like naturally have to react to the circumstances on the ground. So like creeping annexation in the West Bank, for example, making us closer, let's say, to like a one-state solution. I think it's all going to be very, very gradual. I'm not seeing, even if Trump were to give a green light, I'm not sure the Israeli government has what it takes to make a decisive action one way or another.
Would they stop aid? I mean, when day one Trump's in office and he says you don't have to aid anymore, do you think Israel would stop aid?
I really, it's all speculation. I really don't know.
Yeah,
but
it's only 2 weeks away. God forbid.
No, I know. So yeah, we'll have to
come back and evaluate.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your content and saying like, I definitely got way more pushback for my anti-Zionist or views than for talking to counter-Semites, and I think it's somewhat related, and that partly kind of how I fell into doing it. But that's playing a role. But I think and it's unfortunate because like for a period I was going to Palestine, but it was really very difficult. What am I going to do? I'm going to go, and sit with like Palestinians and tell them like how bad I feel, how much I disagree with my fellow Jews. I mean, it's really a disastrous situation. So, I appreciate you staying strong and trying to have this dialogue and appreciating the danger. I mean, most Jews are Israelis. They're worried about the danger that they're in, and I could appreciate that danger somewhat. But unfortunately, like my main fear is what we've already done and what we might do.
Yeah, it's a very valid concern, and thank you for coming on here and sharing that. And happy to have you on. Whenever.
Okay, yeah, and if you do those debates or whatever, like a modern day debate that fell apart. Like I don't know, you were split. Like you were looking like you were going to be like a regular for the Israeli debates, and then
they're down to keep bringing me on. It's just it all comes down to the opponent. They're like, find an opponent who's willing, and we'll do it. So. Joseph Cohn was interested, and then I explained to him in a text why he made a bullshit propaganda video casting doubt on the death toll in Gaza, and then the second he released that, he messaged me and said, okay, I'm ready for the debate on modern day debates. He thought he discovered something, a faulty data in the Ministry of Health, and I explained to him why his analysis was wrong, and I haven't heard from him since. And granted, not credit, but I do want to also, he just had a kid as well, so he's busy. I don't want to say he went dark just because he doesn't have anything to debate me on, but fact is he challenged me and then disappeared once I pointed out that he was completely wrong. But if you know anybody willing to debate either Israel-Palestine or the JQ, I'm down. I'd love to do another modern day debates or go on some other platforms. And it was you who introduced me to Adam Green, so I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, I'm still in contact with him, and it's tough. But I mean, a lot of people think like, why is it always Duvid? Like, you know, because there's really not many Jews willing to do it, and like you just put yourself out there, and like, you know, you could probably, like, you were on Kim Iverson, I saw that, but like you know, like Candace Owens or something, it could have been you know, that guy like Andrew May or something like this.
I'll get to Candace eventually.
But I'm saying there's really only a handful of people willing to do it. So, you know, once you're in the sphere of like one of the Jews who's willing to debate or talk, like you know, all of a sudden, like all of them, you know, you're going around because. But so, props to you for doing it, and you know, hope you have success in your ventures.
Awesome, thank you so much, David. Talk soon. Okay, Altoids, thank you for your patience.
No problem. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I believe that this is the first time we've had you on. If that's the case, welcome. If not, welcome back. Who's this? Before you share your thoughts, who's this we got in the avatar?
This is Rabbi Yosef Karo.
Rabbi Yosef Kat. Okay, I'm not
Karo. The one who wrote down the Shulchan Aruch.
Okay, good to know. I'm not super well versed with Jewish history and
it's okay. It's just that I'm
all the great rabbis past.
No, I'm just a descendant of him. That's why I like the.
Oh, okay, cool, awesome. So what's on your mind?
So I don't know. I saw you guys debating. I saw David here speaking. Apparently, he's an anti-Semite too. I don't know, an anti-Zionist. Apparently, because this is what apparently people call him for being anti-Zionist. On that note, I would like to speak on anti-Zionism if it's okay.
Sure, yeah. And just because David's not here to comment on that, I just want to say I don't consider David to be an anti-Semite. I think because he has spoken to many anti-Semites and even he shows an understanding of their position. I think that's very triggering to many Jews. Seeing like a Jew go speak civilly with somebody anti-Semitic and agree with some of what they're saying, that's certainly going to get backlash. But I haven't seen him actually have real animosity towards Jewish people. So I just want to put that on the record. But yeah, so your thoughts on anti-Zionism?
So yes, anti-Zionism. I would like to speak on it because I think there's a misunderstanding on anti-Zionism, on the wider, and then especially both on the Jewish, especially the secular Jewish world and the non-Jewish world. Because I think there's a misunderstanding on what anti-Zionism is and what's the difference between anti-Zionism and non-Zionism, being not a Zionist, either being anti-Zionist. Because we have communities in the Jewish world, like Satmar and Chabad even, who are not Zionists, who are different levels of non-Zionism, closer to anti-Zionism, if we go to the definition, but they do not consider themselves Zionists. We need to understand that Zionism is an ideology created specifically for the creation of a Jewish political state in our ancestral homeland. Whatever you wanted to define it, but that pretty much is what they did. They created a political movement with the objective of creating a political sovereign state on the same level as sovereign states in Europe in the 19th century. Now, for religious Jews, especially the ones who consider themselves to be Zionists or post-Zionists or any level of Zionism, this is obviously not exactly why they support Zionism. They don't only support it because of the political rights or the nationalism part. Many of them support it because they believe that the Jewish state is the Jewish nation is supposed to live in their ancestral homeland by law, by Jewish law, halakha, and that they don't need to have all the reasons the secular Jews in the 19th century were presenting. That you don't need to have the anti-Semitism problem to go to the land of Israel. That you just need to go, whether there's problems or not. And I think that there's like a misunderstanding when people say, "Oh, so you see the Salma people." There's many Jews who are anti-Zionist, right? But they don't understand that even Neturei Karta, which is the most anti-Zionist religious group, even them, they will never say that Jews are not from the land of Israel,
Right.
that they shouldn't live there, they shouldn't govern the land of Israel in a certain degree. So what's your thought on it?
Yeah, so I actually think that it's great that we have Adam here because, Adam, if I recall, you're certainly not an anti-Zionist, but you don't identify as a Zionist either, right?
Yeah, though I have a pretty like nuanced take on it. So like I think that Zionism was you can make a good case that Zionism was a viable solution to the Jewish question in the 19th century. That I think is, but I just don't believe in nation states ultimately. So that's why I don't really define myself as Zionism. But it doesn't mean not support for Israel. I think that Zionism in English takes on slightly different connotations from Tzionut in Hebrew. So I think that
That's true.
we have to kind of like zoom into the differences there. I think Tzionut in Hebrew has much more to do with almost like civic duty and being a good citizen and support
It's
for your
almost
country.
interchangeable with just being Zioni is almost interchangeable with nationalist.
Almost like with patriot.
Or patriot, exactly.
Exactly.
It's interchangeable with just being a patriot. It has nothing to do with a political Zionism, Herzl. That's just not even part of the conversation.
That's right. I think most people, if you ask most, I think Corey did a video on this, right, on the Ask Project. Like, what does Zionism mean to you? What does it mean to be a good Zionist? And most people are like, oh, just be a good citizen.
It's funny because
yeah.
the Zioni, when in the religious world, when people call themselves Zioni, is a derogatory term. People call you, oh, you're a Zioni, but it's not that they don't support Israel. They just have a very bad connotation of what being a Zionist is.
Yeah.
Because
so
of the history behind the movement.
That's right. So I think that's like maybe like a general like inclination that I have is to you just got to unpack the word from all the different connotations, and then lay the connotations on the table and then just examine one by one and see which one you support and which one you're critical of. And so,
just to add a level of complexity to this conversation to show how challenging it is to really define, one can even say, I support the dismantling of the state of Israel, yet I'm a Zionist, right? If Zionism only means the right for Jewish self-determination on our ancestral homeland, that form of self-determination doesn't need to be Israel. It could literally be autonomous zones within Palestine. That's right. So there's endless variations of self-determination that do not require the state of Israel to exist, or certainly not Israel in its current form. So,
but that's why original Zionism. But that's why original Zionism was all about the political sovereignty, the idea that the only way the Jews could have real independence and real self-determination was by having a national state.
Yeah.
By
Jews and for Jews.
I would say that go ahead, Adam.
Well, I'm just like, would that not have been the correct, I think, a viable analysis in the 19th century?
I will say that based on how the environment was, nationalism was everywhere, not just for the Jews. It was around every single corner of the world. Yes, it was the trendy decision to be taken.
Well, sorry, not just trendy, but I'm curious about whether that seems like a viable analysis, right? Like where you look at.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So like whether Adar, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, it just more so it's for us to return to our ancestral homeland after thousands of years and achieve statehood is certainly not a novel accomplishment. Most people thought it was crazy and there's no chance of it succeeding. So it's not like, given the challenges with implementing some form of self-determination on that piece of land, it's not like we had all options available to us and this just happens to be the one we chose. There were very limited ways in which we could have achieved some form of self-determination given the situation. So it just happened to be this was the the winning version of Zionism.
But Adar, do you think that there might have been like other solutions to the Jewish question that didn't involve sovereignty or self-determination?
Yeah, I mean,
what is the Jewish question first?
what do you
What
do
is the
with
Jewish
Jews?
question? No, but yeah, sure. But what do you do with the Jews? But why is it a question first?
Well,
yeah.
I would say that Jews look at the Jewish question differently than anti-Semites. For many Jews, it's like, we don't want to be a minority anymore because we can't control our destiny. And history has shown us that when we're a minority, eventually we're victims of violence. So for us, the establishment of a land where we can be sovereign and self-determine and determine our destiny is the solution to the Jewish question.
I don't think the solution is just that, because we need to remember that in the 19th century, when this question was posed, not the first time, but when it was actually presented academically, we were observing different changes in the world, in Europe, primarily Europe. You were seeing that initially societies were okay with minorities for the most part.
Yeah.
You have the Russian Empire, who were not exactly the best with their minorities, but they were okay. Feudal governments were okay with minorities as long as they pay taxes and they stay obedient to the king, to the monarchy. Now the big changes of the 19th century, obviously, is that national identities were formed and were centralized. You had countries like Germany or France that now had a central identity that they wanted to keep in power. It didn't matter anymore if you were in Marseille or if you were in Lyon. Now you were the Frenchman. And that's why many Jews who in the past were, another person of the many other different minorities in the country that were seen as, oh, this person is just paying taxes, is never going to be the king, obviously, but whatever, this person is just here. Now it became that this person is not just here, this person doesn't want to be part of this Frenchman identity. It's never going to be part, unless they assimilate. Now Jews, in our history, we were, the main thing we were against has been assimilation. So obviously, now this new nationalist assimilationist idea, not just with different ethnicities, but with decentralized ethnicities, like you have many German minor or subcultures like Southern Germany, Northern Germany, Saxons towards Prussians, etc. That now they wanted to centralize, and the German Jews, for example, many of them were not going to assimilate fully into this new German society, and they didn't want to. Many Polish Jews and many French Jews. So this became an issue, and now became a question of, if we're not going to assimilate to this newly formed nationalist environment where people wanted to be one nationality, then what is up to us? What we're going to do? We have to do the same thing.
Although, can I add one more layer? Can I add one more layer to this? I think that it's been made worse by the fact that you have like Western Jews. What do they call them? Like, it was like Western Jews. Those are like Jews who live in traditional German lands that are at least assimilatable in some sense. But now you have a flood of Jews escaping pogroms or whatever from the east, coming to Germany. I think they call them Ostjuden, right? Like the Eastern Jews, and they don't share they don't speak German. Like none of their kind of like sensibilities are those of like the German Jews that had traditionally lived in German lands. And now you have that added question of, how do you have to integrate these guys? They're not open to assimilation, and they're not open to integration, and they are the ones that share none of our values. And what do you do with them in a time where we have an increasing focus on like ethnic based nationalism?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, and so that is a question, right? Like, and right. I think that is the Jewish question, and
especially in the beginning of the 20th century, that you have the Russian Empire trying to centralize culture and ethnicity. That's what pushed the pogroms in the first place, and pushing people. You have, for example, in England, in London, you have many newly formed Ashkenazi communities of people who were just escaping pogroms. And in east sections of Germany, or even in France, people who were escaping, and also the Netherlands, obviously, the famous communities in the Netherlands and Belgium, people escaping the pogroms and assimilating to local communities like the Sephardic communities and the existing Ashkenazi communities.
Okay, so then the question is like, can you keep the Jews safe without having kind of control over, I don't know, like the police force? Like oftentimes, when you say like, I think about like self-determination as saying Jews want to be in control of the police. Jews want to be in control of armies because otherwise somebody else is in control and they're unlikely to play nice with the Jews.
Yeah, but for example, you guys were speaking earlier with David, or with yourself, I think it was with David, that in America, Jews have been so connected to other communities, and we have so many opportunities to participate in the political and social economic life, that it's not such a big problem like it was in Russia or the Middle East.
Right, no, but most Jews are not in America, and even then he pushed back on me saying that most Jews are not nearly as integrated as I would
Yes, but I think he's wrong in one part, however, because he's only talking about halachic Jews, people that we consider 100% Jewish. He's not pointing out the more than 20 million people who is direct descendants of Jews, meaning either paternal lineage or the grandparents, and even like close family, people that you connect. That's more than 20 million.
Are you sure? Are you sure about that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's actually interesting because what you're saying, I've never seen any like source to back up what you're saying, but
I can find a source later.
No, but it kind of makes sense what you're saying, because if you look at the global Jewish population, it's growing very, very slowly, like unusually slowly. So maybe what's really happening is it's how they're counting Jews, and that's what points to this very slow growth. Like I know Syrian girl who she has absolutely zero credibility on geopolitical issues, on any issue for that matter, as far as I'm concerned. But she keeps making the claim that there's 120 million Jews worldwide, and obviously that's baseless. Haven't seen any source of it. But she uses a similar logic. She's like, yeah, look, the population is growing at an unusually slow rate. So I wonder if what Altoids is saying, if what you're saying is explaining why the growth has been so slow, it's just how they count them.
I mean, in America, the Ashkenazi population has a very small percentage of growth, but no, also the assimilation numbers are very high.
Right. Yeah. Wait, real quick. I see Al. We have you in the waiting room. So just if you could give yourself some kind of a thumbnail, either turn your video on or give yourself a thumbnail just for the aesthetic. Real quick about what you said, because admittedly, this isn't an area that I've studied all too well, but I have done some reading on it, and there certainly was, in the late 1800s, there was, nationalist movements rising up all over the world, and this is what inspired, on one hand, Zionism, and it also inspired Palestinian nationalism. They were both inspired by this global trend of nationalist movements, and this also is what created the tension between amongst Jews, right? Herzl and his crew viewed the solution to the Jewish question to be the establishment of a Jewish state or some kind of Jewish self-determination, where many of the other European Jews, they thought that this is going to continue to other us from society. It'll make us seem as different, and they were kind of pointing to this trend where British Jews are now British and German Jews can be German. Like, why are we going to continue to other ourselves from them? This is an opportunity to integrate more into European societies.
But then the major segment of the Jewish population in Europe didn't want to become either assimilated nor wanted to be a state, and they were the vast majority of the population in Europe. Yeah, religious Jews, that is, of Eastern Europe.
Altoids and Adar, though, but isn't it I don't know, I sort of see Zionists as just the Jews that were left. The Jews that survived are the Zionists, right? Like, that's it. It's not like you had all these other stripes or all the other gradations, all these other colors, fine. But the ones that said, no, really, we're true Germans. No, we're true British. They're gone. They're left. So they're the ones that moved to Israel or to the U.S., insofar as the U.S. took them, are the ones that became kind of like Zionist-ish, but
that
not
is 100%,
ideologically.
Adam.
What's that?
Because that's 100% true. Because not only the ones who wanted to assimilate, but like I just said, the ones who didn't want to assimilate, the ones who were not Zionists, were just religious Jews that didn't want to do anything. They got wiped out. 90% of all the Yiddish speakers were completely killed in the Holocaust.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I did, maybe I misunderstood what you said. The conditions in the minority rights in Europe were pretty atrocious for like thousands of years leading up to the Holocaust. It's not that the Holocaust was, I mean, it was exceptionally bad in terms of extermination of Jews, but like it's not like that's when the problems began, right? And one can say it's a result of lack of assimilation, right? If Jews stopped being Jews and didn't stay in their communities, then there wouldn't be anti-Semitism because there wouldn't be Jews. But the Jews
Well, Adar, I see it the other way around. I think it was the fact that they got even more. The fact they assimilated more.
Well, they probably fueled they fueled each other, right? Like
No. I'm saying that like you don't see that like the level of anti-Semitism that you saw at the late, like in the 20th century. I think you didn't see that in the Middle Ages because of the segregation and separation of society. I think the moment that the Jews were emancipated, anti-Semitism takes on a very different shade. So it's Napoleon coming into Germany, right? Like it's about now the Jews are out of their ghettos, and now you have to contend with the question.
Man, there's this famous story. There's a famous story of a rabbi who was posed with this question when Napoleon invaded Russia. He was asked, "Well, Napoleon will come and emancipate the Jews, and that's very good." And the rabbi said, "Yes, that's very good that we are free now." But then they posed with the question, "So now that we're free, what's next?" So they decided, "Oh, it's better we stay this way. So we don't want to assimilate. We don't want to do anything. We'd rather be segregated in the shtetls than being emancipated."
That's right. There's a similar kind of comment. I think they said, like, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just anti-Semitism though didn't start then. You know, it
took
really
on a national form though. It took on like the kind of like almost like commoditized like mass this I don't know, like a mass media version and a commercialized version of anti-Semitism. It wasn't religious anti-Semitism, right? Like,
right. I guess and this is something, the history of anti-Semitism is something I've been reading up on, because as I mentioned earlier, it's a topic I'm going to get into more. But anti-Semitism in Europe first started by the fact that we came as refugees. We were like these Middle Eastern refugees amongst Europeans. Okay, that's not the kind of population that will generally be treated well, especially in that time. Shortly after Europe converted to Christianity, well, who killed Jesus, right? We were scapegoated for killing Jesus. And then it seems like Jews as the scapegoat became part of white Christian culture, that it almost became a meme that has stuck around until now. And whenever we see that, whenever there's problems in society, a scapegoat is found, and often it's been the Jews. And I think that dynamic, now this dynamic of us being oppressed, to be oppressed and to survive means you need to be resourceful. It means you need to gain power elsewhere. So our survival strategy has only continued to fuel this notion that the problem is us. We still are this eternal scapegoat, but the more powerful we became as a survival mechanism, the more it was easier to blame us for all the problems because of our disproportionate power. So I kind of have seen us stuck in this cycle where we're blamed for something, we're attacked, we survive. The fact that we survived makes us stronger, more resourceful, more insular, more powerful. And then it's like, next time shit hits the fan, who are you going to blame? The Jews. Shit hits the fan, who are you going to blame? The Jews. And through this 2,000 years of pressure cooker, we became who we are today with our disproportionate power and quirkiness and whatever you want to say about us. We're a little bit different. This is a result of us surviving for 2,000 years in a pressure cooker. And it just becomes this kind of this vicious cycle that the more we're attacked, the stronger we become. The stronger we become, the more we're hated. How do we break this cycle? It's something I've really been thinking about.
Can I add one thing that usually in these conversations people
so Altorj, we'll have you add something, but this will be final thoughts just because we have Al here and I want to bring him on as well. Okay.
Yeah, sure. that in the Middle East, in North Africa, Jewish communities were also very, very popular, very, very powerful politically, economically, especially in Iraq, for example, Morocco, in a little bit in Syria, maybe, but specifically in Iraq and Morocco, there were very, very big, powerful Jewish communities. And people forget that many of these communities were actively pro-science. They were collecting money, finding donations to create a strong Jewish community in the land of Israel, in the Palestine, whatever you want to name it. And that people tend to forget that even if, let's say, all the Jews of the Middle East, the Jews of Europe weren't killed in the Holocaust, the Jews of the Middle East were still participant in Jewish people migrating into the land of Israel. People tend to say, "Oh, it was the fault of the Zionist movement itself, or they were forcing the Jews of the Middle East. They have no agency. They were forced. The European Jews were using them, or whatever the arguments are, which are not true. If you talk to the communities of the leaders of the time, the Sephardic communities in Israel, the leaders of the time in the Sephardic communities in Iraq, in Syria, in Morocco, they were all wanting and willing and supportive of the movement, wanting to go to Israel. Now, they were not fully on board with creating a state. I don't know if it was not all linear decision of creating a state, but they were okay with Jews migrating actively to the land of Israel.
Very interesting. Thanks for hopping on and sharing all this. By the way, what's your accent? Where are you from?
Miami.
Okay, but it's kind of a Latino accent, no?
I do speak Spanish, yes.
Okay, a lot of Cubans, I guess.
I'm not Cuban, but I do speak Spanish. There's a lot of Spanish people.
But you're not American-born. You don't need to tell me if you
well, I am
are.
American-born.
You are?
Yeah, I'm American.
I guess that's the Miami accent.
The Miami accent is I don't know, it depends where in Miami, but there's people that speak very Spanish with a Spanish rhythm.
Right. Okay, cool. Well, Altoich, thanks. Very insightful stuff. You're welcome to join anytime.
All right, thank you.
Talk soon. Okay, we now have Al on, and I always ask people to put the avatar on. Sometimes the avatar doesn't tell us all too much about what side someone's on. This one gives a little bit away, but we're excited to have you on, Al. I believe it's your first time as well, so welcome to the show. And you mentioned to me that you want to make the case on why a sovereign Jewish state is needed. So, yeah, floor's yours.
Can you guys hear me?
Loud and clear.
I'm sorry, I'm suffering from bronchitis, but it's a pleasure to be on the show here. I was just going to say, I live in America, which is the best country in the world. But even I remember back during World War II, how there was this ship with 1,000 Jewish passengers that was basically denied entry by every country. And what happened to those 1,000 passengers? They had to go back to Germany and they all perished. So that's my logic for why we need a Jewish state, is if there's ever a situation like that arises, that at least one country will take you in no matter what. As great as the US is right now, as great as all these countries are, can we guarantee that they will take us in if that happens? And we already have the proof that they didn't. You know what I mean? There is precedence. And you were mentioning something about a confederation and a one state. That's all nice, but can they guarantee that if a situation like that arises, they won't just democratically vote and say, nope, we're not going to accept this ship and override, with plurality.
Right.
That's what I just wanted to mention. If anybody can, answer that for me. And
I'm not sure either of us are actually in much disagreement with you over that idea.
I think I might be.
Okay, so I'll just share a few quick thoughts, and then I'd love to hear what you have to say, Adam. But what you're saying, I think, in theory, is very much true. I think we don't have a long enough timeline to prove if in reality it plays out like this. So it's like in practice, since the Holocaust, Israel is actually one of the most dangerous places for Jews, right? It's the place where more Jews have been killed for being Jewish than any other place in the world since the Holocaust. So the case could be made, and I've heard people make this case, that Israel actually makes Jews more in danger, not only because it concentrates half the Jewish population into one small country surrounded by enemies, but it also creates animosity. Israel's existence creates animosity towards Jews from around the world. But I think the counter to that is that, again, we're looking at it at a relatively short timeline of only 75 or somewhat years. And and even though it's more dangerous being a Jew in Israel than in the US, statistically speaking, we still in Israel can control our destiny, right? And that gives us even though we die more in Israel, it still gives us that sense of comfort knowing that we are in control. And I don't think that sense of comfort we have knowing we're in control should be trivialized. I think it's very important to us. So I'm sympathetic towards that view, but I do understand the counter. Just looking at the numbers, you're more likely to be killed as a Jew in Israel than in America by significant margins currently, right? So I see it both ways. Adam, you wanna?
Yeah, I guess I'm not like, I understand the sentiment behind saying, okay, well, there were ships of Jews that were turned away. We have to guarantee in the future that no Jewish ship would be turned away. That sounds nice, and it sounds kind of like directionally right, but there are no guarantees in the world. You can't engineer a global order that provides those kinds of guarantees to any group and to every group that once had faced rejection. I just don't know what that kind of world order would look like. Instead, what I think we need to do is we have to accept that there's going to always be risk, and that a risk-free world, to get to a point where we have a risk-free world for the Jews or for any other people, I can't even imagine what you're going to have to do to build that kind of reality. The Jews can't be privileged in having always having a guarantee, while the rest of the world, no one gets a guarantee. There's no guarantee that the world won't just turn on the gay population and kill the gay population. Does that mean they have to have a country of that? No, of course not, right? Like, there's no guarantee
of a gay country. That's hilarious. Never thought about that.
But if the gays were persecuted for thousands of years, they would probably be in a little bit of a special class than the rest of the population. Wouldn't you agree?
Gays were prosecuted and persecuted for thousands of years.
No, I mean, but you know what I mean, like Holocaust style, and
but that is the point.
pogroms
I understand that the Jews feel a unique vulnerability and are facing unique risks. I understand that. Many people would say that they are facing unique risks. That's okay too. I think I'm not deaf to the concerns of the Jews. All I'm saying is that you cannot, what you should do, as if you're a Jew that is concerned about no country ever accepting you, there's a bunch of different things you should do. One of them is perhaps you might want to invest your energy into a country that is very friendly to the Jews. That could be Israel, that could be the United States, that could be different places. And next, you should probably build the kind of international world order that is respectful of individual rights and is concerned when you see atrocities happening around the world, and is pioneering almost like a concern for the plight of oppressed people. And you should bring that kind of sentiment to the rest of the world and try to hold everybody else accountable when they're increasing the risk on an oppressed population. So I think there's nothing else you can do.
To make sure I fully understand your position, it's not that. Essentially, what you're saying is you don't feel that that's a valid argument for some group to achieve statehood, the fact that it's the only way to ensure their survival. But this isn't making the case for, let's say, the dismantling of the state.
No.
Right. You're essentially just saying you don't find that to be a compelling argument for why it's needed.
That's not compelling. The fact that they have been harmed. Now, you can also make the case, You could say that if you're going to make a nation state to protect any class of people, the Jewish nation state makes a lot of sense. Yes, of course. I mean, if you're going to make one, of course it should be for the Jews, because they have been at such risk throughout so much history. But I just don't find that to be, I feel like Jews have an expectation of guarantees into the future that is kind of difficult to reconcile with geopolitics, and like no people have that expectation. No one should ever like oppress the gypsies. Therefore, I don't know if the therefore. I don't know. We should just all be concerned about any people being oppressed.
Yeah, it's almost like the suggestion is that there is a better way to ensure the rights of all people, more so than them each having a military to protect themselves. Like there's a better way to protect human rights.
Yeah.
So
I think Adam, if everybody in the world was like you, then the world would be definitely, a better place if everybody thought like you. Unfortunately, not everybody thinks like you, So it's like a utopian society you're going after, where everybody just is kumbaya, lives in peace.
No. That's not what I mean. I'm saying I'm trying to create principles that allow us to engineer stable international systems, right? That can scale. And I'm not seeing the Jewish claim to unique and privileged protection to be a scalable principle that we can use to engineer international systems.
And I'm sorry, are you Jewish yourself? I don't know who you are. Are you Jewish?
Yeah, my family is Jewish, yeah.
Okay. Have you ever been like subject to anti-Semitism?
Not consciously, no.
Okay, maybe that's another reason why you're speaking like that, because I'm from another country and we escaped anti-Semitism to come to America.
Right, but you see how like even like I don't think, I'm not sure that I would feel differently. Maybe I would feel differently, but there are lots of different people who had faced lots of discrimination.
I mean, I'll give you a quick example. In school, you couldn't get an A because you were Jewish. So even if you deserved an A, the teacher would literally tell you, I can't give you an A because you're Jewish. You get a B.
There's nothing you can do to guarantee that such a society won't come about in the future. The only thing you could do is work really hard, given the constraints, to build the kind of foundations of a society and an international world order that respects people for their differences. That's what you can do. But if you want to say, and therefore I will do X, Y, Z to guarantee that Israel always is a place for Jews, you're just playing a very different game from what everyone else is playing. People are trying to play international politics. People are trying to like build societies that scale. And that is a kind of commitment to a, I don't know, to like a type of I don't think we have, it's a good way to put it. It's almost like the private type of like the provincialism that we have about only looking out for the Jews. I don't think scales well, and I don't think sounds good to non-Jews. And I think that non-Jews might look at us and say, okay, I understand you guys had suffered in the past. That does not mean that the whole world has to rotate on an axis to just make you safe. That's not how the world works. Now, I understand that you're trying to make something that works, but you should try to come up with a formula that works for everybody. If you're only coming up with a formula that would only work for Jews and no other people can ever implement that same formula, it's unlikely to be very popular. And I would understand that. That's kind of what that sounds like to me. Like if the premise is Jews need to have that guarantee, okay, let's just give an example, right? Like the Iranians might have a nuclear weapon. Let's imagine that, like they're 80% of the way there, 90%, 99% of the way.
Probably closer to 99.
Exactly. So based on the kind of calculus, the Jews must guarantee they always have a state. There is not threatened. There's nothing to stop Israel from annihilating the Iranian nuclear power plants. And you could say, if it's 99.999% close, maybe they should do it. But the guarantee claim, maybe this is just like I'm unable to kind of like parse anything. Like, I just don't know where you stop. If 99.99% claim guarantees that, you know, if you want to enshrine that the cause of guarantee, and you think that 99.99% makes sense, fine. Why not 80%? Why not 70%? Why not 10%? Why not, if the Iranians, there's a 1% chance they might have, you should go and destroy. Like, what stops Israel from enshrining that guarantee and taking it very literally?
Let me ask you a question. Do you think Israel would have a problem with Iran getting a nuclear bomb if Iran never made any threats of using it against Israel?
No.
Because you got to put two and two together. I mean, the reason why Israel is saying this is because Iran basically said, once we get it, you're going to be the first country to use it.
I'm factoring that in. I'm
Real
factoring
quick,
this in.
Iran, I don't think made that statement. They do say that Israel's a cancer that needs to be eradicated, so they do call for Israel's destruction. But I don't think they ever made like a direct nuclear threat.
I think I read somewhere where they said that we're actually going to use it against Israel first, and we don't even mind if they use it against us, because there's a lot of Muslim countries and there's only one Jewish country, so we'll destroy them. They'll destroy us, but there'll still be a lot of Muslims left. I read an article somewhere about that.
No, that's fine. Feel free to share it here. I haven't seen that, but that's almost besides the point, because that doesn't really address what Adam's saying. It sounds like what Adam's saying is that there's never a full guarantee for security and safety, and because there's never a full guarantee, that doesn't mean anything you therefore do is justified in order to achieve that guarantee, right? So recognizing that groups need protection is essential, but what you do next, I think there's countless different options, and statehood is one of them, but there's others. So I would you say that's your position, Adam?
Yeah, states that work to try to maximize the like not to provide guarantees, but to maximize the chances, or to minimize the chance of harm, maximize the chance of well-being. And ideally, they do it in such a way that scales, right? In a way that is creating the kind of international culture and norms that make it less likely.
But I think Israel is doing it through scaling by helping other countries with, you know, water resources and technology and agricultural, you know, things. Israel is helping a lot of countries in that way to show that they're peaceful and they, you know what I mean, they want to coexist with other societies.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I'm sure people in the audience will have a very different take on the kind of norms and cultural expectations that Israel is displaying. But you can make that case. That's fine.
I mean, it's not without, you know, it's not completely absurd what I just said, right? There's
no, I just think that
there's countries in Africa that they said, "Why are you supporting Israel?" And they basically said that we're actually getting something in return that's, you know, tangible. You know, desalination plants, agriculture advancements, medicine.
No, all that's nice. It's just that, and I think Israel should do. I mean, insofar as they've done that, that's excellent. I think that a lot of people will look at Israel and see gross violations of international law and complete disregard for people who live in their midst or the people under their control. And they will say that it looks like Israel is creating an anarchic international world order, and that isn't one that should be replicated. And so Israel isn't displaying the kind of example that it wants others to live by. I think that would be the critique. So what you're saying isn't absurd. It might just be incomplete for people who are more cynical about what Israel is doing.
Yeah, I mean, I basically never saw Israel, you know, slap away a hand that reached out to it. I mean, if you could give me an example of a hand that reached out to Israel,
there's a bunch.
I mean, I would love to hear it, guys. I like I said, I'm totally.
There's been specifically with Hamas, actually on a few occasions, Hamas has offered truce deals to Israel.
Well, I wouldn't consider Hamas part of that, though. I'm talking about like a state, you know, state actor reached out.
That's true, because Israel doesn't have any issue with the surrounding states. Israel would like nothing more than peace with our Arab neighbors, and ideally also peace with the Palestinians. But peace with the Palestinians is very conditional to our terms. And since Netanyahu has been in power, we're talking 2 decades now, there's been close to no negotiation, and Hamas has on a few occasions attempted to reach a truce, and we don't even counter offer them. It's just an outright rejection. It's a maintenance of the status quo, and that's what led to October 7th. It's a status quo that will always produce more violence, and there was very little attempt to change the status quo for the better, very little. So we're very much, Israeli leadership is very much responsible for the situation we're currently in.
It also seems like if Hamas is doing anything like that, it's just to buy time. That's the way I look at it. Like, I don't really look at it as them being genuine, you know? It's just to buy time where they can get stronger and attack.
I've heard that speculated, and it's possible. I'm not going to say that might not be, like, that certainly might be their consideration. But another consideration could be that they attempted to go down the path of the PA, of moderating and becoming a more legitimate government, both in the eyes of Israel and the international community. Their attempts to do so were just met with blockade, mowing of the lawn,
Right.
And it's not like they had a clear path towards peace with Israel aside from just complete surrender or just a complete change in the demands of the Palestinian people. So when you're left without means of resistance, violence generally is what you're left with. And again, this is not an endorsement of violence. I consider violence to be horrible and an absolute last resort, and I don't think we're at the point where it's the last resort. But Israel has kind of not given many means for Palestinians to achieve statehood. That's pushing Palestinians towards
No,
violence.
that's true. That's true.
You know,
Al, the problem hasn't been with the Arab states, right? The problem has been with the Arab stateless. Maybe.
The Arab stateless. Anyways, Al, any
Thank you, guys. I appreciate being on here. God bless you guys.
By the way, where are you from, if you don't mind sharing?
New York. But originally from Russia, Soviet Union.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us, and I'm glad you're getting to live the American dream.
This is the best country in the world, you know.
So, amen. Or as we say, inshallah.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, Al. Okay, awesome. Maybe Adam, we'll do a quick Q&A. Maybe we could also. Do you have more time?
Yeah, let's do it.
We'll do a quick Q&A. I set a goal, a super chat goal. It's this new thing where you could kind of set. You set a goal based on donations. So we'll do Q&A. We'll obviously prioritize super chats. And you know what? We're actively fundraising. We're going to fundraise our entire company through super chats. Okay. We're done with investors. We want a distributed ownership. Well, actually, I'm getting into a regulatory challenge. A super chat does not equate to equity. I want to make that very clear. But super chats will help fund our operations, so let them flow. The goal we set was 5 super chats in the next 30 minutes, and if we hit that goal, then there will be some kind of celebration. I don't know. We're testing new things. Adam, any questions you see you'd like to address? Any? Oh, we got a super chat.
I'm not seeing the chat, by the way.
Oh, well, so Edley Dowie, Palestinian friend from New Jersey. Great to see you here. $5. Thank you, Ed.
How do I see them? Oh my God, I see them here. Oh my God, I haven't seen them the whole time.
Oh yeah, dude. It's actually been one of the most civil comment sections.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. I did see some stuff. Somebody asked, have you heard of Esther Project, and do I think it has a chance of happening? No, I actually haven't heard of a national strategy to combat anti-Semitism. Oh, interesting. Okay, I will read this and get back to you. It could either be revolutionary or absolutely cringe. It's one or the other. I already get that sense. Anywho.
Okay, should we just go?
Casimir mentions that's because he wasn't here to be uncivil. Well, Casimir has entered the chat, and let's uncivilize it a little bit. No, honestly, Casimir, you generally, I haven't seen you engaging in bad faith or anything like that. That doesn't mean you're always the most kind, but neither am I. So it's all good. We're all here doing our best. And it's something I wanted to mention, because I sometimes do get into these back and forths with commenters, and sometimes I'm even a little mean to them. I generally do this with people who I have like an ongoing relationship throughout the years. So I feel just a greater level of comfort to crack jokes. I also recognize it to have entertainment value, but I recognize that it gives the perception, especially to new viewers, that I'm just being unkind. So I'm gonna pay attention to how often I get snarky with the comment section, and now especially because we're building headon.ai, I think I need to hold myself to an even higher standard. So I'm gonna make an effort to do that.
Okay, Adar, we see a bunch of questions here.
Yeah.
Should we? I think some of the questions might be for one another too. So.
Yeah, and we also have Omar, not fellow. I was about to say fellow Palestinian, but Palestinian friend here. We kind of ended the call-in, but maybe we'll bring Omar on for 5 minutes. You want to hear from Omar? Because we haven't had
Palestinian, yes.
But he's gone. He just left.
Ah.
Too much. I set too many expectations, I think.
Oh no. Okay, so should we have some from Callistos? Taisonmin Maxhama, did you ask a question? Oh yes. Will you be okay with expelling the Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria to achieve peace? With quotation marks around peace. Do you want to take that one?
No, you could go first.
I think you and I see eye to eye on that one. So, in general, I'm not a fan of kicking people out of their house. So that's sort of a principle I'd like not to violate. I understand a lot of people would probably think that settlers in Judea and Samaria or the West Bank have already kicked other people out of their houses, in which case, what do you do? I think it should be the case that maybe the larger settlement blocks, right? If you look at like the map of the West Bank, most of the population is concentrated into just like a handful of like larger kind of very dense towns, cities, neighborhoods. Those are likely to sort of be, make sense that they would be annexed to Israel. Gush Etzion, Ariel, yeah. What about all the other Jewish communities that are kind of like more like sporadic, might have like fewer than hundreds of families? Should they be expelled? I don't see a good reason to expel them. I mean, they could just become citizens of a Palestinian state. I don't really see a reason why they need to leave. But would I be okay with this? I would not be okay with expelling them.
Yeah, I generally agree. I think that we can achieve justice without creating a new injustice. And as you know, as radical as the average settler is, they're also just products of their environment and education system, and have just been influenced by their surroundings. So having, and I make this argument when speaking against the bloodshed in Gaza, because often it's said, yeah, but Palestinians support Hamas or Palestinians support terrorism. I don't think that because you have a bad view, you therefore should be punished in a way that's, I don't think there should be a punishment for having bad views. And you certainly shouldn't lose your human rights because you have bad views. I think generally, just an all-around humanist approach to the conflict is the best way to solve it. So I can see many ways where we can achieve peace, even if it's a Palestinian state where you don't need to uproot people from their homes. As Adam said, if there's a Palestinian state and there's Jews living there, they can be citizens. There's also maybe some solution where they have like permanent residency, but they're still citizens of Israel. There are many different solutions to this. If the hypothetical is there's no way to achieve peace while they're there, and the only way to achieve peace is by removing them, and we can say with a high degree of certainty that this will actually achieve peace, then I would see that as a valuable.
Adar, I think can I? Yeah.
Yeah, not valuable, but a viable solution. But I don't think it would need to come to that.
I think that there's a question here that Callistos Callie is asking, and there's like a thread that they're exploring within a few different questions. So, and I think it connects to what you were saying.
And Omar's back, so Omar will bring you on in like 2 or so minutes.
Yeah. So the Callistos is asking most recently, any reason why Israel can't be binational state like Belgium, previously they were asking, is claiming Israel to be a Jewish state hurting the idea of protecting all peoples, not just Jews? And Israel should be Israeli state, not Jewish state. All Israelis should be protected, not just Jews. So is there space in like current kind of like ideological kind of in like the in the Israeli intellectual space for accommodating the like Palestinians or non-Jews? And do you think there's space in intellectual circles in Palestinian society to accept those Jews that might be in the West Bank in a way that won't then cause a civil war, which is the follow-up for Tyson Min? They're saying, what if the entire population ends up within the Palestinian state as citizens? Wouldn't that cause more issues, possibly civil war? So do you think that those spaces kind of exist, like those intellectual kind of spaces? Is there enough acceptance of non-Jews in Israel? And would there be acceptance of Jews in Palestine? Is there something you can speak about that? Maybe Omar can comment on that too. Might be a good way to bring him in.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, if we look at minority groups within Israel, there's certainly room for improvement. And yet at the same time, minority rights in Israel are the most progressive in the entire Middle East. As far as I can tell, I haven't found an instance of better minority rights. And again, this doesn't mean that it shouldn't be improved upon, but I think we see a workable model. What it will be like for Jews to be a minority in a Palestinian state after such a long conflict, I mean, it's hard to see how that would play out. We would really need a guaranteed protection and some kind of reconciliation process. I could see a future where that can happen, but it's not like a simple, straightforward thing.
Ed Ledawi, however, says there was always acceptance of Jews before 1948. How would you respond to that then?
Yeah, I would say 100 years of conflict is going to radicalize a population. So we have three generations of conflict now. To think that we could just wind the clock back to pre-Zionism and live like that, perhaps after reconciliation, but not overnight. It's going to be a process. The Jews and Palestinians that live side by side are long dead. The Jews and Palestinians living on the land today have an immense amount of fear, hate, and mistrust of one another. So we need to grapple with that reality. And on that note, Ed Ledawi with another $5. Thank you, brother.
Shukran.
And he goes, come on, folks, chip in. And also, David hit us with a $3 super sticker. So that's cute. Thanks for the sticker, David. We've almost hit our goal, 3 out of 5. You want to bring Omar on, or did you want to?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Omar, welcome.
Hey, how are you guys?
Good. It actually would have been cool to have Al on as well, because it would have been the Jewish star next to the Palestinian flag. That would have been a cool screenshot. Anyways, yeah. What's going on?
Yeah. So quickly, so I watched like the live stream that you guys did last time, and like I had like many things to discuss in it, but like I think right now I can at least like just bring up at least maybe one thing or two things. So like just one thing, I can just make it as a comment, which is you guys like you treat the Gazan population, generally speaking, like as the like ignorant, low information people that like it's very hard to interpret what they believe in, and they don't really have access to the information that we have access to, etc. I don't think that
Omar, real quick, are you referring to Adam and I, or you're just saying
Yes.
Israelis in general?
You and Adam, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I noticed that like in the last live stream, like did Gazans know that Hamas did such and such? Did they know that they took hostages? Did they I think no, like you can just like assume that yeah, they do have the information, at least about like those basic ones.
Wait, but Omar, real quick, I'm not intuitively, I actually would have agreed with you, but then I was faced with information which changed my opinion on this, which was two anecdotes, one from Fahed, the other from Muhammad al-Sharif, rest in peace. Both of them saying they believe that in Gaza, they believe that no civilians were targeted. And then when you look at the polling on Gazan polling on if they support October 7th, 70-something% support it, but then over 90% in that same poll think that Hamas committed no war crimes on October 7th. So when I see stuff like that, it's very hard for me to reach a conclusion other than they're clearly misinformed about what's going on. I mean, do you see it differently?
Oh yeah, of course. I think they're like pretty well informed. The only thing is that the way that they define what a civilian is just different than the way that you define what a civilian is. So from like the perspective of Palestinians or Muslims and Arabs in large, like generally speaking, like what happened on October 7th, like mainly the main videos that we were seeing is that like the guys basically finishing the Israeli soldiers in all of the like military posts and military points around Gaza, like killing them or taking them captives basically. And the other, like the more common videos that you guys in the West see are the ones in which they kill basically people who are not carrying weapons. About the civilians part, yeah, and like a very big part of the videos was look how humane they are. They are saving children. Look how they are not killing children. They're going home to home, killing the adults and saving the children. There are videos that Hamas were releasing, like showing themselves sparing babies and sparing children. So that's basically what we were saying. And yeah, like look, they are sparing the civilians and killing the soldiers. And there are like I can think of maybe like half a dozen videos that are like this. And like even the statistics and the numbers, that's what they say. It's very clear, it's very obvious that Hamas did put the effort, they have avoided and they have succeeded in being surgical, avoiding killing children. So based on that, yeah, they say that they did not commit war crimes. They did avoid killing civilians and they succeeded doing that.
Well, so
based on what they mean by civilian, what they mean by, like, that's what I mean.
Exactly. By the way, Omar, last time when I brought up and I don't think it necessarily has to do with Gazans being low information kind of consumers. I think it's more about it is difficult, at least, I mean, Adar, you can speak for yourself. It is not easy for me to know what Gazans believe. And so I would rather confess ignorance about it.
That's
I don't want to say they believe a bunch of things that they don't believe. I don't want to make that. I don't want to be presumptuous. So I say, you know, whatever they say. But the only thing that I did bring up last time is that I know that there are some people who question what it means for a person to be a civilian. And I got a lot of pushback on that in the chat. And it seems like you're perfectly confirming that point.
Pretty much. And I mean, like, today you invoked like Yusuf al-Qaradawi basically and what he talks about. It's basically this thing that the population of the Israelis, they are all militarized. All of them, and like it's like, and that's even without invoking the IDF mandatory conscription. Like that by itself would be enough. If you put on the top of it that those people are like usurpers of land, like they're settlers of land, and like them, yeah. And like, yeah, go ahead.
No, but I think in particular we asked whether or not they knew that like the baby, right, like Bibas was there. I don't know whether Gazans know that the baby was captured or not captured. Like it would be very difficult for me to know. I don't think we got any.
So for example, let me give you an example. Like there is a video actually. It's an Al Jazeera exclusive of like one of the fighters, like leaving a mother with her son and just like leaving them go away without like taking them back, for example. So like those are the kinds of videos that we saw.
No, I know that. I was on the Telegram, and the videos that Gazans were receiving are totally different from the videos that Israelis were seeing.
Correct. Because we put an emphasis on the civilians being killed, and they put an emphasis on soldiers being killed. But Omar, doesn't that kind of support what this idea that the information is not being spread as it's coming in?
So that's basically the emphasis. But like, yeah, even those people, as I told last time, they targeted the rave, the people celebrating at the rave. Yeah, like all of those people are like, again, IDF soldiers, active duty.
Yeah. So how do Gazans determine what a civilian is?
Yeah, a military age. Generally speaking, the population, generally speaking, those are not civilians unless they are children or like very old people. So to be more specific, for example, to make it easier for you, at the dawn of October 7th, like Mohammed al-Daif, the commander-in-chief for like Al-Qassam brigades, like when he gave his the speech over there, in this speech, like he says that like he commands their like the men avoid killing the children, avoid killing the elderly. In that speech of October, like at the morning of October 7th. So beside that, if you are on the land of occupied Palestine and you're of a military age, generally speaking, you're not a civilian. And like you need to look at it like
is that because of mandatory conscription?
so that's like you put this on the top of it that I live in a refugee camp over here. I'm denied getting back to my land over there by the people who are living in that land, actively choosing to whatever make aliyah and come there, or like actively stay there in order to solidify me being expelled from my land, etc. So
Right.
it's those two things like come hand in hand. It's both. Like,
So-
so just let me just bring this thing up.
Mhm.
When Al-Qaradawi say that there is no civilian in occupied Palestine, quote unquote, of course, children are excluded, elderly are excluded, etc. What he says is that it's a militarized population. Right now, I'm quoting him. So it's the IDF conscription. Yeah, for that one.
Right. I guess the challenge with this is I can understand how that's where their definition comes from, but I think it's important that we attempt to standardize what a civilian is, because many in the pro-Israel camp are do the same thing, where they try to say, any military age man, as far as we're concerned,
Yes.
that's just that
Yes,
that can be a militant.
Yes. I was watching. Let me just interrupt you there. I was
Yeah,
watching
sure.
a podcast. They hosted like probably the most famous Hamas spokesman that we have right now, a politician. He lives in Lebanon. His name is Osama Hamdan. It's like a 2 hours podcast. And over there, he was asked this question about civilians. And what he said is that we have offered, and it's still the offer is on the table, is like how to define what a civilian is from both sides. From us, like we can change the definition. On the other hand, they need to make a guarantee that they avoid killing our civilians. But for us and Hamas as well, and Palestinians, we do believe, and that's like a completely different perspective between us and you, that we do believe that the IDF actually targets civilians to kill them. So when Osama Hamdan says that, yeah, we can reach a mutual agreement to put the lines that you don't kill our civilians, quote unquote, and we don't kill your civilians, quote unquote, or like we redefine what civilian means, and based on that we can go on. And even in the podcast, he said that's a very recent podcast, like pretty recent, post October 7th, and he says that the offer is still on the table. So like there is that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. In
Omar,
terms
yeah, Adar.
of, go ahead.
I'm very curious about you can choose to categorize a concept like civilian. I'm just trying to think about like the usefulness of these categories. So like you could say that somebody is innocent or not innocent. You could say somebody is a combatant or a civilian. You can make different distinctions. So I could understand how somebody in, let's say, like from some perspectives, say that no one in Israel of military age is innocent. That doesn't mean that they are combatants. It doesn't mean that they deserve to be targeted, but it means that they are not innocent in the sense that they are usurpers. So, but you say more than that. It sounds like you're going beyond that. You're saying, forget about whether or not they are innocent. We say they are not civilians. In my mind, the only other category is a combatant. So I don't know what a non-civilian, not like I know combatants. So if you say that the Jews of military age or anybody in Israel of military age is a combatant or not a civilian, does that mean that targeting them will get you any closer to anything? Like what is the? I'm really curious about how you take that concept and bring about the concept of liberation. What happens if you, because from the Israeli perspective, it's very clear. You get rid of the combatants, it's done. Like that's your entire objective, and there won't be any more war. There's some delusion associated with that. But in the Palestinian perspective, can you help to tell me what is the through line? They say if we target men and women of military age in Israel, therefore what's going to happen?
Yeah, no, so yeah, of course, it's not just, we want to just kill them to take revenge, etc. No, it's not. It's like based on calculation, pragmatic calculation. Let's do X and Y and Z in order to achieve that specific goal, whatever.
Can you tell me X, Y, Z? I want to know the X, Y, Z.
Yeah. XYZ do a very successful commandos operation in which you kill few hundreds IDF soldiers, IDF reservists. You finish the division of Gaza and the IDF, and you take captives back into Gaza, so that hopefully that's gonna be used in order to release the Palestinian captives. That's gonna be used as a starting point for something in the future.
Wait, no,
That-
I'm sorry, Omar.
Yeah.
Can I refine then what I'm saying? Because like you're making the case right now about the military, but I'm saying military age civilian, like the military age non-combatants. What is the operational logic of targeting girls at the Nova Festival?
Oh yeah, so okay. So again, when you say girls, for me that's an IDF reservist that served in the IDF for 3 years and was like just on that checkpoint over there just like a year ago or like maybe 2 months ago. So that's how I see them. Like when some of those girls celebrating there, some of them were brought back to Gaza, and like their videos were disseminated basically. Like one of the okay, on I'm not diverging. Like I'm still on the topic. Okay. In the channel called Al Jazeera Mubashir. So over there, the Al Jazeera anchor, he hosted one of the mothers, a mother of an Israeli hostage or Israeli captive. Okay, and she was like a female, like a girl that was basically celebrating in the rave. And she was basically saying and crying basically that she's just works as, I think, a waitress in Tel Aviv, and she wants to do nothing with that, etc. The anchor, he asked her directly. He asked her, "Did she serve in the IDF?" And at the beginning, she refuses to answer the question, and then she says yes. And then he asks her, "Did you serve in the IDF, Mr. Mother of the captive?" And then she said that's not relevant. He tells her that that's gonna help us. That's gonna help the audience learn who we're talking about, and she says yes, she served in the IDF as well. So of course that makes us like lose empathy 100% instantly to those to the crying poor waitress in Tel Aviv. Yeah, but like you were just in that lethal raid in the refugee camp in Jenin just 2 months ago. What? Why would they have? Well, you know what I mean?
Yes, but I want to bring you back to I understand all of that stuff. What I don't understand is the operational logic, and I want you to make it make sense.
Yeah. So generally speaking, that's how we look at them. So like what leverage do Palestinians have really? It's basically mainly, I personally think that it's probably like 3 things mainly. The first one is the normalization from the Arab and Muslim world. The other thing is the recognition of Israel. And the last thing is the security and safety of Israelis. I think that's the biggest point of leverage that they have. If they give up that point of leverage and they give the Israelis the security that they want, I mean, what? Like that's the biggest leverage point that Palestinians have on the table of negotiations. Of course, I'm gonna, like as a Palestinian, pragmatically, I'm gonna keep targeting those reservists, etc., to make the Israelis feel that okay, we have to reach the peace, we have to sit on the table, and to take that and to give something in return. So it's something not necessarily like an instant like reward that you're trying to take out of it.
Yes. Can I ask then for clarification? You're saying just make sure that I'm understanding this right.
Yeah.
You're saying let's put all the other levers on the side for a moment and just focus on the security one. You're saying if only we continue to kidnap, to kill, to create an atmosphere of terror and fear for the Israelis, then they will be able to come back to the negotiating table and to say, and to be willing to negotiate with us and to give us the certain things that we want.
It's not exactly directly like that. Again, you want your safety, you want your security. Generally speaking, on the long term, you know that Palestinian resistance, they don't hesitate killing IDF soldiers, IDF reservists, IDF ex-soldiers, etc. You, as an Israeli, like as an Israeli government or someone who cares about the interests of the Israelis, you would want that to be neutralized. It's not something direct, one-to-one. Oh, if you don't give me peace, I'm gonna kill from your children. No, this is not how it works. I'm gonna kidnap you. Yeah, go ahead.
What I'm curious about is like, but what I rarely hear from and maybe my ears aren't attuned to the right directions, so feel free to kind of calibrate them. But I am not getting the sense from Hamas that really what they're in,
Yeah, you really don't. You don't see how pragmatic they are.
No. Even more specifically, like I am not getting the sense that they're saying, "Oh, if we do X, Y, Z, you will be willing to do A, B, and C, and then together you have your cards, we have our cards. We'll come back together. We'll sit down at a negotiating table, and then we are willing to live alongside you in some form of coexistence. And therefore, and because you guys are not willing to sit down and negotiate with us, Israelis, then we have to keep making a scene for you and making it unlivable for you, and therefore." Like I'm not actually seeing the dots connecting. All I'm seeing is that the Palestinian resistance is using violence to try to bring about those ends, but in reality getting themselves killed and immiserated for decades in the process. I just see it continuing to blow up in their face and not getting them the progress that they desire.
Yeah. So I think we actually have like some kind of different perspectives, or like especially Palestinian or Hamas there. So I do believe that the approach, like generally speaking, like just in general, like this approach is again the most pragmatic to reach those ends in the long term, and like the thing that is gonna be, like generally speaking, the best thing for your people, generally speaking. So how do you connect the dots? In fact, like look at the history. So for example, after Hamas won the elections, so, okay, over there, we have legitimacy. We have finally, for the first time, an actual legitimate or codified legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. And that legitimate is like reaching out, saying that, let's do something. That person, they have done exactly the same that you said, which is we have the card of recognizing Israel. Let's like do something about it. They did this exactly. I'm not sure. Are you aware of this? What I'm talking about? Like, do you want me to refer to it?
Yes. But I think I would probably put a slightly different spin on it. Like they said, yes, we're willing to negotiate along 67 and a complete repatriation of the Palestinian refugee problem. So it's which is essentially like a non-starter for Israelis.
No, okay. So that's the thing. Okay, no, Hamas, they have shown very clearly that the full-fledged right of return, that everyone returns back, that probably they're okay with just a symbolic return, if not like maybe no one returns back. Of course, when you enter the negotiations, you're not going to tell them, I'm going to, before entering the negotiations, tell you that I don't want any refugee back.
But brother, just keep in mind, though, this is at a time when like the charter of Hamas is showing a slightly less tolerant version of reality for Jews. This is, they're not, like their rhetoric before that. I mean, look, this is at a time where, but grant you, I mean, I could.
It's fine. Help me understand.
I understand what you're saying. Let's imagine they take over 2006, 2007. They go to Israel. They say, let's have a conversation. Israel rebuffs them, doesn't talk to them, rejects all of this. I'm with you. Go on, please.
Yeah. So, and like to be more specific, you think the Israelis wanted the Palestinians to give them like unilaterally for free to even before sitting on them are like mainly three things, which is like recognizing Israel, renouncing violence or renouncing like terrorism, aka violence, aka violent resistance, and the third one is that you're gonna abide by Oslo Accords. That's like 2006, which is like crazy. And Palestinians, what was the response from the Hamas? You think Ismail Haniyeh, the first and only elected prime minister of Palestine, what did he say? Let me quote him for you. And like he said, and like right now I'm quoting. No, that's Aziz Dweck, which is like a leader in Hamas. So he said, which Israel do they want us to recognize? Is it Israel with the West Bank? Israel with the Golan Heights? Israel with East Jerusalem? Israel with the Nile to the Euphrates? Let Israel show us its borders, and then we talk about mutual recognition. So that's Hamas leaders literally saying this.
Yeah.
And the Israelis saying, no, you have to give us unilateral recognition before even sitting on the table. You have to abide by Oslo, which is like by 2006, that's like the Palestinians were completely doomed for sitting on the table. So like, again, like look, put yourself in Hamas shoes at that time. You won the elections. You want to be super pragmatic. So, okay. And you have to put that into context. these Jewish settlements, you were able to kick them out of Gaza only after fierce, heroic resistance that was there for years, that made it untenable for the Israelis to sustain their settlements in Gaza, which is 100% pragmatic. And pragmatically, they kicked out the settlements, and then they won in the elections. And then, what's the pragmatic thing? Reach out to Israel, tell them, yeah, let's do something. That's the purely pragmatic thing. There's no Islamic fundamentalism or like irrationality in that, not at all. That's unfortunately like the misconception or like the deep misunderstanding of the people of what Hamas is all about. They think they're just like irrational, like Ben Gvir or Smotrich, the people who are acting based on like fundamentalist religious ideology that makes you go against your interests. Does this make sense what I'm saying?
I think there's a different logic in the early 2000s to voting for Hamas than there is now for supporting them, or before the war for supporting them. I think I have a different degree. Like, and I asked this to people who I think were like more of like Fatah members, even in Gaza, like in the early 2000s. Was like, what was the appeal? And I spoke to them about that, and there's a lot of different reasons why you might have supported them that are not Islamic fundamentalist reasons. I'm fully well aware of that. I'm still waiting to see how you go from, again, so far, whatever happened in 2006, since then, what's happening is, by and large, Palestinian violent resistance on Israeli civilian population doesn't seem to be getting you the kind of political objectives that you want.
So we started 2006. You think the violence that Hamas successfully did in Gaza and how they succeeded in kicking out the settlements, you think that was pragmatic and successful, and that gave us the fruits? The answer is yes, right?
No. Sorry, I'm not going there even.
They kicked out the settlement. It's the first piece of land of Palestine that was liberated. Literally the first one.
I think it's likely. I would give it maybe like a 70% chance.
Okay, let's go after that. Put yourself in Hamas' shoes. You succeeded in kicking out the settlements. You won the elections. What's the most pragmatic thing to do? It's exactly what Hamas did. Exactly.
No, but it depends what my objective is, right? Like if we have to anchor this onto something. Like I imagine that what Hamas is trying to do is to liberate Palestine from the river to the sea. And not to, I think that's their objective. If that's their objective, I'm going to analyze the pragmatism on the basis of that objective. If you're telling me that actually they have a different objective, I'll analyze the pragmatism differently. Is that their objective? Or do you think it is not?
Of course. Hamas, they are under no illusion or delusion that they can liberate Palestine from the river to the sea, and they're just trying to do that right now. That's not true, Mr.
So tell me, no. Sorry, I'm not saying that. Okay, so how did they get there?
Yeah, okay, so from liberating Palestine from the river to the sea, that's not a thing that the Palestinians can do. If that would happen, that would only happen if the Arab people or Muslim people around them, the populations, they get liberated, they become actually free, they become actually self-sovereign, and the liberation is gonna come from outside. The Palestinians, again, Hamas doesn't think that they personally alone by themselves. That's not a thing. The objective is that I'm gonna tell you is basically to solve to hit the two core problems of the conflict right now. The two core problems. The first one is basically the problem of the occupation of the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza, and what happens with the occupation, which is the settlements, desecration of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, etc., etc. And the other thing is the refugees. So basically, those two things they could be solved after 2006 if, on the Israeli side, was someone that is willing to actually sit on the table, to actually make the compromises, to actually talk about that. Does this make sense? If put yourself in their shoes.
No, sorry, we're continuing to come back to 2006. We could play that game, right? We could pull it even back.
No, we're gonna go after. No, we're gonna go to the years after. We stopped there. Put yourself in their shoes. Your objective is the refugees. You wanna Okay. You wanna solve the refugees problem, the occupation. Those two. That's your objective. What's the most pragmatic thing you would do?
I'll tell you what I would do. What I think is the way to destroy Israel, to dismantle the occupation and to bring back the refugees. But it's not an answer that they would like. But that is an answer
Not destroy Israel necessarily.
Say again?
not destroy
But
Israel.
What do you mean by liberate Palestine from the rivers of the sea without destroying Israel?
No, right now. You asked me what's
No,
the
but it's
Yeah.
even if their focus is returning refugees, which I would consider that to be a very interesting starting point, because I don't see why Israel would ever agree to something like that without
told
an
you,
actual
returning.
without a peace agreement in place. It almost seems like rate of return is going to be the last thing we figure out, not the first thing. But
Okay, no, yeah,
but
yeah.
even the rate of return is the strategy to destroy Israel from within.
Exactly.
It's about letting
That's
in
right.
millions of people who don't support the state, changing the nature of the democracy to
Yeah.
so that one day would no longer be democracy, or it'll be a Palestinian state where Jews are no longer provided protection. That's at least the concern that most Jews, understandably so, have with
Yeah.
rate of return.
So I mentioned what I mean by right of return. Hamas has not just hinted; they have even said that it's not necessarily the right of return that you're saying. Just we want a resolution for refugees. We want to settle that matter. So Adam, at least for now, okay. Let's say that you want to be purely pragmatic. That's your objective. Just solve the refugees, not as in return them back all to Israel.
Oh, no, listen, come on. Are you're telling me that for symbolic? What is symbolic?
No, not necessarily symbolic. Maybe like return like 10,000. Not necessarily
10,000. You're saying that really what Hamas has been trying to do is get 10,000 Palestinians back into Israel, and so right now we're seeing a whole war. Everything that's been happening in the last 20 years is just because Israel has been unwilling to bring back 10,000.
No. I'm gonna quote Hamas. They want a just and thorough solution for the refugee problem.
That's
just
right.
and thorough doesn't mean necessarily all of them return back. It might mean some symbolic return back and the other some reparation, give them citizenship of a country, etc. That's what we all understand.
Okay, but I don't understand it like this way, and I think a lot of people don't understand it this way. But if you understand it this way, and you think a lot of Gazans understand it this way, that's very interesting.
So yeah, for me, when I hear Hamas talk about the Palestinian right of return, I just think of do some kind of agreement. For example, we need like give them state, like they need to cease being stateless people without any rights.
Wait. I'm sorry. Can I zoom into that? Because it's very interesting. So are you saying that because you could, let's say you're Gazan, you could stop being stateless by belonging to the Palestinian state and never having, that has nothing to do with refugee-ness.
Great.
Right?
Yeah. So we need a Palestinian state. Yeah. Okay.
No, I know, but that seems separate. So normally when we speak about Palestinian state, I think we speak about there being sovereignty in Gaza and in the West Bank, but then in addition to it, a just resolution to the refugee crisis or to the refugee question. So, but are you saying that having an independent and sovereign state for Palestinians is enough, and you don't need to repatriate Palestinians back into 48 lines?
Yeah, not all of. So yeah, I'm very positive that it's not. Yeah, repatriate all of them back. For example, look at the Arab Peace Initiative. It started with the right of return unequivocal. Then it was actually just a symbolic one. Then it was no need to actually any of them. For Hamas, like I'm telling you what I personally believe, or like what I see. They say that it means maybe give them some reparations.
So I want to understand. Like, do you please correct the ignorance here. It is difficult. This is why there is like an opacity here. It is very difficult for Israelis to get a good sense of what Gazans believe on the street. It's hard. It's a little easier to figure that out on the West Bank. When I look at videos of people in the West Bank speaking, this is mostly like Corey's channel and the Ask Project, and also from some surveys, but mostly like the qualitative sense is from videos. You see them actually believing that they themselves are going to go back to Jaffa. They themselves are going back to Haifa. This is not symbolic. I'm not going to get $100 in my checking account. I'm going to go back to the house where my grandfather lived.
Yes.
Is that not true?
Yeah, that's 100%. Yeah. I didn't talk about the refugees themselves. Of course, we, like from our childhood, we see cartoons and we get learned that you see that village across the fence over there. We're getting back to it. That's our home over there. That's what the refugees and the refugee camps in Gaza specifically. That's how they grow up basically. That's different than the politics and how Hamas wants to resolve the issue of the refugees. They're again pragmatic. They are not again under no delusion that they have enough privilege to leverage to return them all back. They're willing to sit on the table, negotiate that. But however, their starting position is I'm not recognizing Israel. I want all of my refugees back. And like I want a state, and I start from there, and then we do negotiations. If you want me to give up, for example, to give you recognition, you need to give me something back. If you want me to give you, for example, no refugees get back, you need to give me the Al-Aqsa Mosque. You don't desecrate that, and you need to make sure that you help me resettle those refugees and make some reparations and resolve their issues, not just in Palestine and Lebanon and Syria and Jordan, etc. Generally speaking, so that's the most pragmatic thing to do, literally.
When it comes to right of return, if we want to talk pragmatic and something that I can see both sides agreeing to, because again, anything that involves a fast and drastic change in demographics on the land will just be outright rejected by Jewish Israelis, and the chance of us achieving anything without both sides consenting to it is so much less. So I look for solutions that are not only just for all people, but also have a likelihood of actually being achieved, and solutions that both sides would agree to is such a thing. So I think in right of return, it could look something like this. Currently, you have around 30,000 Jews making Aliyah every year. I don't know if that's changed the past year, but historically speaking, it's around 30,000 a year. There's only so many people a country could absorb every year. It's not like 1 million Palestinians can show up next year and we'll have any way to absorb them. It's not good for the economy. It's not good for the culture. Like there's just a limit of how many a country can reasonably absorb every year. So there could be a law that says every year we allow for 30,000 Jewish immigrants, 30,000 Palestinian immigrants, and that way it's being done in a way that's not only equitable, it doesn't create this demographic concern that will just make Jewish Israelis outright reject it. Do you think that's something that Palestinians can get on board with?
But I think they can get on board with something even more radical, with no Palestinian getting back to their land. In return, we give you back East Jerusalem, and we dismantle the settlements, and we get out and we give you your state. I personally, that's my personal conviction, that would be a no-brainer, yes, for Hamas and the Palestinians.
That's interesting.
That's like that's why you guys have wrong perception of what Hamas is all about. Like oh, they took children and hostages. Oh yeah, that's the most pragmatic thing to protect my civilians.
No, but Omar,
for example,
But what I'm not saying is this: like, if there's a way to guarantee that all the Palestinians will die, it's to keep terrorizing the Jews. That's the guarantee. Like, that's what's going to happen. Like, Israel will go out in a blaze of glory and will wipe out the region before they're gone. And it sounds like all of like their pragmatic kind of approaches are only inching it closer and closer. If you think that you've seen a genocide now, wait until you implement yet one more October 7th on the Israelis. So nothing here is close to pragmatic unless your strategy is get as many Palestinians killed, and then the world will feel really bad, and then but
not
even
really, no.
You could see the long game being played here. Like Hamas's rationale could have been like, we're gonna cause this horrific attack. We know Israel is going to respond by destroying Gaza. We will take the blow. We will have martyrs. They will be,
I don't think that's the case.
But just real quick, the rationale could have been, if we look at polling, I mean, public opinion is more anti-Israel than it's ever been. You very well may have a situation where in 20 years, America does not give this blind unilateral support to Israel because the demographic has shifted to being anti-Israel. That very well could lead to the demise of Israel. So I could see them playing this long game of causing.
Not on the Palestinians, not on the hands of Palestinians. That's the key. The Palestinians, it's not going to be on the hands of them, even if America just abandons Israel.
Wait, Omar, can you say that again? I didn't.
Not on the hands of Palestinians, the demise of Israel, the way that you're talking about. The destruction of Israel, the Palestinians, they don't think that they can do it by themselves. That's not real. That's not a thing. There's something that you mentioned, which is about Hamas not being pragmatic. So, like, I'm going to get back to 2006, not just because I want to get back there, because like I want to just progress. How about the year after it? Oh, the coup, and they aborted the coup. That's, again, the most pragmatic thing. They militarized. They spent so much on quote-unquote defense, on like the rockets, technology, the tunnels. That's 100% the most pragmatic thing. Again, If I'm gonna sit with Israel on the table, what's the leverage that I have? It's their security and the recognition of Israel. Of course, I'm gonna make sure that I'm strong. When it comes to
Wait,
October 7th, yeah, go ahead. Before October 7th, forget about October 7th. Yeah, go before October 7th.
But why go before October 7th? Like you could just like stop at any one of those wars, and you can say, okay, well, fine, they're going to invest all of their infrastructure into creating these terror tunnels, and then what? Then wait 2-3 years, and they're going to get destroyed again, and you have to keep rebuilding.
Yeah,
like
I don't believe. I personally, unfortunately, I think that the result, how this war unfolded, I don't think that Hamas has anticipated that this is going to happen. I think
that's what I'm saying. Like if you have an understanding of the Israeli mentality, you would see that this is deeply pragmatic. Now, from their point of view, it might seem pragmatic. Oh, just scare the Jews a little bit, and then they'll come to the negotiating table, and we'll have something to trade with. But the reality of it is that if you're going to scare anybody, and you're scaring, then scaring the Jews will probably be the least effective way of getting them to come negotiate.
I disagree with you. I think if the Israeli government was a rational actor, I think it would have worked perfectly. Unfortunately, they were unlucky with an irrational actor against them, which is the Israeli government that is taken hostage by Ben Gvir and the interests of Netanyahu. Hamas, you have to remember, they have taken more than 200 captives. In November, they have released like 100 of them. Of course, that's going to give it the momentum so that the round after it, we're going to do the thorough, final, last one in which we finish the war, and hopefully there's going to be a path for the future. And they get the momentum in November. But it's only because of the irrationality of the agent against them. That's why it didn't work. That's my personal belief.
I think that irrationality might be baked into the culture. I don't really think that if you had a very different government, a centrist government,
I agree with that.
Would have been any different.
As bad as Netanyahu is, there's a deeper cultural issue that won't be addressed by like Lapid or Gantz being in power. It's gonna require a bit more than a change in government. I'm bringing Altoids on. He has to be brought back.
Oh, okay.
Altoids, you want to chime in?
Omar, stay here. Omar, stay.
Yeah. Not instead. We're just mixing it up a little bit.
Yeah. So no, when I say rational, that doesn't mean necessarily Lapid or whatever. Benny Gantz. That means Netanyahu that is driven by the interests of Israel, not Netanyahu that is driven by I want to stay here. Does it make sense what I'm saying?
The interests of Israel don't seem all that different from the interests of any other government today, right? Like, and any other government I think would do. Look, I think there's a very obvious kind of like cynical take that you can offer about why Bibi is waging the war in the way that he is. That being said, if there was anyone else in power, they would probably wage the war similarly. When I was there, I went asking a lot of people questions during the protests for elections, right? So there was at some point they started to have these protests, maybe in February or whatever, against the war not against the war, against the government, right? In Tel Aviv. I started asking people questions like, what do you disagree with about the conduct of the war? Granted, things might have changed. It's been now a year. But I asked them, what do you want to see? And you're like, I want to see elections. Why? I want to see a new government. Why? What do you think a new government would do that this government isn't doing, and vice versa? None of them could give me an answer.
No, it's just one thing: the abandonment of the captives. Hamas was not surprised that at the beginning, the first month happened as it happened, or the first 2 months, or the first 3 months. They were very prepared for that. That was expected from any Israeli government. But abandoning the captives completely and just dealing with the situation as if they are not there, that's the irrational element that I'm talking about. Does it make sense?
But arguably it's not. Arguably it's perfectly rational, right?
I think that's a mutually destructive approach.
Well, no, I mean the rationality. I mean, I think this goes back even to the time of Moshe Dayan. I think he would say things like, "You simply cannot negotiate over hostages. You cannot. You have to go in as if there aren't hostages, and you have to deal with the situation as it is. Otherwise, you're just continuing to encourage more and more hostage taking, and then the next wave of hostages are going to be on your shoulders."
So that works for one hostage, 2 hostages, not 200. You know what I mean?
Look, no, I understand it. All I'm saying is that I understand it isn't purely irrational. I could see the reason in it. It isn't just that you have a lunatic government right now. that is somehow totally not abiding by the rules of logic, and therefore that's the situation that you're seeing in Gaza. That isn't the case. It's that you might have competing rationalities here, right? You have one argument in defense of bringing the hostages back right now, and the other one in destroying Hamas and making sure that no one else is taken hostage in the same way to be used as cards. And both of those are I think are endemic to Israeli society, and Israeli society is feeling both. And you don't need you don't need to resort to somebody like Bibi and his corruption charges in order to understand what's happening. And I'm saying that those are the deep kind of analyses that I think someone like Hamas doesn't seem to be doing all that well, because look at what's happening.
You think so? You think if on October 6th, if you did the math and you ran the numbers, don't you think you're gonna reach the same?
No. Look, that's what I'm saying. Okay, so I have an answer and a question. So I'll start with the answer. The answer is there has been a general trend of refusing to give back prisoners for hostages. General trend of Israeli society becoming increasingly cynical with that approach. And it's been in the discourse since the 80s, and that's been happening every decade. And especially after Gilad Shalit, a lot of people were saying that actually the society had become more split. Even in the case of Gilad Shalit, there was already some kind of a difference there in society, and some fissures in society about whether that should have happened. And afterwards, there's been more and more voices that come on.
Correct.
So I think that in general, I think a deeper sociological analysis of Israeli society would reveal it's unlikely that if you take 200 hostages, all of Israel will simply capitulate. Unlikely, right? So it's a possibility. Unlikely. The more likely situation is that Gaza will be destroyed and wiped off the map. That's the more likely outcome.
I mean, if I would look at it at that time, and the most likely outcome would be, it would be very tough for a month, 2 months, 3 months. Eventually, we're gonna give some momentum for a captive exchange deal, because we have again 250,000, 250 captives. We're gonna be able to get it moved, and then hopefully we're gonna be able to just finish the war and make. I think. I don't know. You think? I still think that Sinwar, when he did the calculation, that was a risk, but it was a risk worth taking, because the probability.
It's not worth taking. That's the thing. It's not even close to worth taking, because it's not pushing you in the right direction. All you're doing is you're getting Israeli society to be increasingly radicalized. Bro, when I talk to people about a two-state solution, I sound delusional right now.
It is delusional.
Sounds crazy.
It is delusional. No, it's based on the current facts that we have. It's right now, 2025 January. It is delusional. I'm not saying.
Let me just make one point. The Palestinians, they are not waiting for the Israelis to have some compassion and mercy on their hearts, and to be less radicalized to give them their state. The Palestinians are very well aware, and that's what history tells us, and that's what they tell us, that you have to do it by yourself. You have to go through the struggle in order to force them to give you the state that you want, and you have to use the leverage that you have. That's why not? What do you think?
It's not going to happen. It's not going to work. It's simply not. It hasn't worked for you for 80 years, and it's unlikely to work for the next 80 years. Israeli society, unless you make it. Adar, go ahead.
Well, no, you can finish that sentence, and then I'll.
Israelis, if Israeli society seems to think that by giving a state, they are rewarding a society that wants to use terrorism, that is committed to wiping it off the map, they are unlikely to create the conditions for you to succeed. You understand? They will destroy you. They'll do it without anybody. They'll kill all of you. That's the thing.
That's the thing. I don't look at it that hopefully they reward me or they punish me. I look at it that I forced them to give me back Gaza. They did. I forced them to. I make the settlements in the West Bank harder for them. They make them hard. You know what I mean? That's the Palestinian perspective. It's not that they are the all-powerful entity that has all the power, and I just need to hopefully make them have some compassion on me. Does this make sense what I said, Adam? It's actually no, I forced them to get out of Gaza, and just by force I succeeded. It's not out of the compassion.
But I don't think that's really how it happened. That's why, if you want to zoom into 2000, I don't think that's really how it happened. I think that, for example, you will not Okay, first of all, I think it was precipitated by what happened in Lebanon. I think first what you saw is the IDF receding from Lebanon. When was that? 2001, 2002. And then that is sort of like emboldening Hamas into thinking, well, if you blow yourself up enough at the Israeli posts, then they're gonna recede. They did similar things like this, but what was the Israeli inclination to recede from Lebanon? Was it a right-wing one? Was it a purely like security defense rationale or not? It was, at some point, it sounded like Sharon was moderating. That's what he was perceived to have done in the pullout from Gaza. And most of society, a lot of society didn't back him. Oh no, he left. A lot of society didn't back him because it sounded like he was moving more towards the left. Today, especially after having cleared out the settlements from Gaza, you're going to get zero support for anything close to it. You essentially brought Israel to it looked like there was going to be a civil war or whatever, right? Like we didn't know. Will soldiers totally like disobey orders when told to to expel Jewish settlers from Gaza? We didn't not know what's going to happen. I think that what all you're seeing right now with the judicial reform is society's reaction to what happened back then in 2006. They're saying in 2005, they're saying you did not uphold individual rights. You did not uphold property rights. The EU Supreme Court, therefore you need to be dismantled or whatever, weakened or whatever. Correct. You don't have the kind of tolerance today for receding. The only thing you have today is expanding in defense of a situation like this. Everybody now looks at what happened in Lebanon and saying it was a big mistake. We should have pushed them past the Litani. There's no way that you're getting in here, right? If anything, maybe we should not have receded. So the only thing that you're saying right now isn't Israelis be like, wallahi, look at what happened. Now they did this. No, okay, now we're gonna come back. But they're saying, get the hell out of here. The next thing that's on the next option is for you to go to Egypt. You know what I mean? Like that's what's on the table.
I see. I mean, no, yeah, okay. Now, for me, like I'm looking at it
logically, yes.
Yeah. Let me just make one point. Like for me, I'm looking at it that, oh my God, we're spending all of those billions of dollars, and we're occupied by like a third of the army is occupied in Gaza to what? Guard like few hundred Jewish settlers there. It's not worth it. Why? It's not worth it because the Palestinians made the cost very high. It's really that simple. Adam.
Yeah.
But look at the West Bank.
The Lebanon thing.
Now the Jews in the West Bank are taking care of it themselves.
What?
You saw that because you see that you just said you themselves are saying that the IDF was in charge of protecting the Jews in Gaza, right? Now the Jews in the West Bank saw this after 2005, after they were expelled, and they saw this as the IDF cannot be trusted anymore for this kind of things. Now they're taking their own defense or offense, whatever you wanna, their attacks. What they're doing currently, they're doing it based on this same 2005 reaction. Although, they don't want what happened in 2005.
I'm not sure that the increase in settler violence is directly related to feeling like the IDF is not there to protect them. I just think that's like just a new radicalization and extremist ideology that's kind of being bred on some of these hilltops because.
Well, yes, of course.
Yeah.
As well, I know of someone who has been living in Gush Etzion for 40 years. 40 years. Gush Etzion was established in 1967, so he was there in early 70s, I think. So he has children who was born in Gush Etzion. He has grandchildren who was born in Gush Etzion, and he tells me that he remembers in the 1980s that when there were no big presence or push from the settlers to the violence that they have today, that they were being attacked all the way in the 80s, and they didn't have any options to defend themselves, right?
I think we diverged. Adam, I think the arguments that I made are correct, and like I think that like we disagreed, and I think it's obvious that I got it right and you got it wrong. Again, first, the Lebanon war, it happened after disengagement from Gaza. Second, they disengaged from Gaza just because they did the calculation, as I told you, billions of dollars to protect hundreds of settlers. That's not worth it because the Palestinians are making the cost very high for us. Let's get out. That's what happened. It's really that simple.
Sorry, Lebanon. I meant leaving Lebanon, right? 2001. So I mean, I don't mean the second Lebanon war. I mean the IDF leaving. But
Okay.
I'm curious, Omar, because like all I'm saying is that even if that were true, that if only you make Israeli like society kind of like recognize the costs, the solution that they have on the table isn't to then give you more space. Think about it. Like all of Israeli society is virtually against the disengagement, right? So what you have, this is the meme. The meme that's going around is that, look, we wanted to pull out. We wanted to give them more autonomy. We gave them more control. And what did they do? They got close to the border. They used up all of the solar, all the greenhouses that we've given them, and now they got that much closer and are shooting rockets even from closer. Big mistake. Sharon made a big mistake. We have to have a heavy hand. That's the Israeli logic.
I see.
So I feel like
But
my question
correct,
is,
because in 1993,
Yeah.
the Palestinians and the Israelis, when they went to the table, you saw that for many years before 1993, before the Oslo Accords, Palestinians were engaging in terrorist attacks until they decided to engage exclusively in political disagreement. And the Israelis accepted. They really saw this as a move to change the dynamics of the war, and they went through it. But you see, violence will not get anywhere in the peace process. It will just make people less willing to make
So,
peace.
If I may chime in here on this point, so I think we actually uncovered something quite interesting. The way, Adam, what you just described was how many Israelis viewed the failure of the Gaza withdrawal. The way Palestinians view it is violence worked, right? We were violent and they left. And in the West Bank, with the moderate government, we continue to expand outward. So in the minds of Palestinians, they're like, wait, violence works, moderation doesn't. The PA currently has a security agreement with Israel. What has that? What have they accomplished? More settlements, more security in the West Bank. At least here in Gaza, we push the Jews out, right? So I think that our strategy of punishing moderates and essentially rewarding extremism was a huge mistake. One. Two, we spoke about how this strategy of October 7th is clearly taking us in the wrong direction. And I agree that by most metrics available to us, it certainly was not the right approach. It's an anti-humanist approach that, led to massive amounts of death and destruction.
Unfortunately.
Can I see a situation where this does lead to a series of events which can ultimately solve the conflict? I see that within the realm of possible, right? Like we might look back on this in 10 years and be like, oh, October 7th actually ended up helping them achieve their goals. And our response to October 7th also helped us achieve our goals, right? I could see a situation where good comes out of this and it kind of vindicates those who support violence, which will be unfortunate.
Okay, let me just chime in. Yeah.
Just real quick, my outright rejection to this approach is I think killing people to maybe solve the problem down the future is just not a good trade-off, right? It's like, what do we know for certain is the result of this approach? Massive death and destruction. What might be the result? Maybe it'll change the status quo for the better. So there's no world in which I would ever support mass destruction of mass deaths of civilians in order to maybe one day solve the conflict, right? That's just not a choice. And I give the same pushback to Israelis supporting the war. They say, hey, all these civilians died, but it'll create a better future in Gaza. We just need to continue. That's a very big maybe, but certainty is the tens of thousands of civilians.
So
I think the war has happened.
Let Omar say a few words, and then Altoids all you, and then maybe we'll do final thoughts for everybody, and because we're going on 3 hours.
Just quickly, how you opened up what you just said, Adar. That's like, okay, that's the Israelis. They always speak this way, which is not true. It's not you who reward me for violence and you who punish me because I'm moderate. It's I made the cost very high for you, so that when you do the cost risk analysis, you see that it's costly, so you disengage from Gaza. If I become moderate in the West Bank, you're gonna do the cost benefit analysis, and you're gonna see no, the benefit is to expand, and you're gonna expand. That's why it's That's why I have to raise the cost on you as much as I can, so that I force you out, aka you're gonna do the analysis and you're gonna get it out. It's not you rewarding me or punishing me. That's first. Second, you as an Israeli to a Palestinian, that's how the Palestinians view it. Unfortunately, you still see it that we rewarded violence in Gaza and punished moderates. No.
But I view that as just framing. Like you can
Yeah.
very much frame it
Yeah,
as
yeah.
this is an effective strategy. This
Yeah,
isn't.
yeah.
But at the end of the day, what makes it effective is how
Yeah.
we
But
respond.
no, the good framing is that the Israelis did the calculation. The cost was higher than the benefit in Gaza, so they got out. The Jews, they did the calculation in the West Bank. The cost was lower than the benefit, so they expanded. That's the correct framing, and that's why you have to always frame it. That's why That's why the Palestinian resistance and the ones who care about the Palestinians, they have to raise the cost on the Israelis. That's how it works. That's how life
I
works.
actually want to point to something important. The framing you suggested is in no way compelling to Israelis, though.
You think so?
And maybe it shows just a different vantage point. The
I
framing
see.
I gave can really get
I see.
Israelis to question our strategy. But
I
for us
see.
to say, yeah, our calculation is self-interested, obviously it's self-interested, right? Like
I
that's
see.
not.
I see. And the other thing about
So maybe that's why we frame
Yeah.
this differently.
And the other thing, really quickly, about the dying of civilians, unfortunately, I mean, like maybe for other days topic, like you guys think of Hamas that they're willing to sacrifice as many civilians as it takes on the altar of resistance in order to liberate Palestine from the river of the sea. That's completely false. This is not how it works. You guys really have the wrong perspective, unfortunately, on this.
Everybody has their own perspective.
No, okay, because you guys don't understand them, because you don't understand how they work. No, like for my perspective as a Palestinian resistance fighter, God has tested me with a brutal genocidal Jewish occupation. I'm gonna need to fight it back. When God tested them with the French killed like 1.5 million of them. Of course, that doesn't mean I'm gonna fight less, because if I don't fight them, I know they're gonna kill just 1 million. But if I fight back, they're gonna kill 1.5 million. Well, that's ridiculous. Of course, I'm gonna fight back. Same to whatever the Africans when the Germans arrived. Same with the British when the with the Indians when the British arrived. Of course, they're gonna fight back. And this whole framing that you guys put, on Gaza, who's to blame on the civilian deaths? Is that Hamas alone or Israel and Hamas? That's ridiculous. Of course, it's only in Israel. Does anyone says, who do we blame the 1.5 million Algerian civilians killed? Is it on the Algerian resistance alone or French and Algerian resistance? That's ridiculous. No one thinks like that. But actually, if the Algerians didn't fight back, maybe only 1 million would have been killed, not 1.5 million. No,
Omar, I totally disagree with this analysis of the Algerian resistance, and how morality is to be parsed there.
At least how we view it. Really, the Palestinians, how we view it. Honestly.
But Omar, that's okay. This could go on for much longer. But I am very so. So can I ask you? Are you saying then that? Oh, I'm sorry, Adar. Did you want Omar to say something? Then Alto jump in. If you want to jump in. But Omar, I'll write it down.
Yeah. Okay. For later.
For Gaza, Omar, I get your sentiment 100%. I think personally, Israel committed a very wrong decision at attacking Gaza, the way they attacked Gaza. Obviously, maybe tactically, on the short term, it was a good decision for the Israeli military. But on the long term, strategically, obviously it was a bad decision. But not only that, you guys have the right to resist. You guys can fight. And anybody that wants to fight can fight. It's part of human nature. But you cannot expect that you fight someone and don't expect the other side to fight back. We all know this for a fact. Whether or not is
they
good,
did expect.
It is a war.
Yeah, they did expect the Israelis are going to fight back. They did not expect that they're going to abandon the hostages completely. That's what they did.
Now, of course, they probably didn't expect that. Maybe they did. Maybe they don't. I don't know. It's been a year already since the war started. But Israel usually takes more care of their hostages. But obviously, I don't think that's something they wanted or had that in mind as of right now. Because remember, Netanyahu, his whole shtick throughout his whole tenure as prime minister was to be the security guy. And the moment in his tenure that something of the magnitude of October 7 happened, it just completely destroyed his person as his whole persona as prime minister. So he had to take very proportionate to what people in Israel saw as the biggest uh, uh, event in in Israeli history, in terms of civilian casualties. They had to take a proportional decision on whether or not to attack Gaza on the way they did. And of course, I'm not saying it was moral or it was correct or it was good or not. I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying Netanyahu specifically took the decision that, of course, has caused a lot of people to die.
Right.
Now, of course, you can expect that Hamas attacks Israel and then Israel doesn't attack back. That's illogical.
They did
Or
not.
that, like, for example, what happened last year, I don't remember if it happens before. I think it happened before October 7th. I don't know if you remember. In the West Bank, a Jewish kid, a shepherd, was shepherding his hair, and he was kidnapped and killed. And the reaction was from the Jewish settlers that they attacked the whole town of where the kid was kidnapped. Now, of course, I don't think it was a proportional reaction, but the Palestinians need to expect a reaction when it's something like this happens. It's war. That's why peace. That's why we're here talking right now, because we want peace. We want to avoid these things.
They expect. I told you what they did not expect. Yeah. I thought they expected that they're going to be genocide. They're going to be going all in, killing people left and right. They expected that. What they did not expect is the abandonment of the captives in this way. That's the case. Go ahead, Adam. You want to say something?
But what do you think? I want to ask this question. Why do you think it is important, the question of the abandonment of the captive on the war?
Well, because if you're a rational government...
For Palestinians, sorry.
Well, can you ask it again?
Why do you think it's important for Palestinians that the Israelis abandon their hostages?
No, that's detrimental for the Palestinian strategy. That's bad for Palestinians. That's like
why the Palestinians will take that strategy if it's detrimental?
No, it's detrimental that they acted irrationally and they abandoned them. That's the detrimental part. That the Israelis.
You're saying that it is irrational? Well, I mean, yes, militarily, yes, I study military strategy, and I don't think it's irrational.
Yeah, no, I do believe that the afterwards, right now, what's happening is irrational. What happened before, I do believe that that's irrational. That's mutually destructive. I do believe a rational act. Yeah, you would in October kill so many people. In November, you would do a hostage deal, like an exchange deal, and it would succeed. It would stay there, and then there is momentum, and then you do it. That's literally what would have happened if it was not an irrational government, basically.
I mean, they had a hostage deal by December, which November, I think the majority of the women and children were were exchanged to Israel.
Right.
So something of the sort happened, but I think the problem with this specific question is that the Israeli government was not going to wait for Hamas to make a deal. They wanted to make sure that people understood, not only in Palestine, but in the whole region. They wanted Hezbollah to understand. They wanted Iran to understand, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Syria, that if anything of this style happen again, taking a couple of hostages will not deter the Israeli military from making a strong decision of just going all out, with or without hostages.
Right.
So I think it was a run strategies from the side of the Palestinians. They should have taken, if they attacked the Nahal Oz base, that would have been a completely understandable strategy from their side. They make a strong attack. They took some military hostages. They didn't cause the whole upheaval in the Israeli society that they just kill people in their houses, and that would have been. I don't think we'll guard the response that Israel had.
There are many things to respond to there. No, of course, no. The Israelis would have acted the same thing. They would have said, oh, they mass raped women, oh, they beheaded babies. Anyways, they would have acted the same way. Anyways.
They wouldn't have.
Of course it would. What? We're talking about Israeli Jews, dude. Don't you know them?
Yeah, soldiers in the front line is different from civilians in their houses.
No, they're gonna say they raped women. No, they're gonna say they raped
but we can establish that.
Yeah, but I mean, Omar, granted, if they just did what Altoid suggested and attacked a single base, the narrative would have been very different. And it's true that there certainly could have been narrative around what happened on that base. Maybe it wouldn't have all have been true. There very, very well could have been a propaganda campaign to around the atrocity of what happened in that base. I could see that being the case,
Adar,
but
maybe
it certainly wouldn't have been at the same scale as it.
No, it takes just 2 people of the riffraff that got out of Gaza, just 2, to get out and maybe do like an atrocious act or 2, and that's it. That's all what you need.
I don't think so.
Let's not be pretending, right?
Guys, I wanna like lean into this one point, because I think it is like first I'm seeing more and more of the chats talking about it, and also I think it is almost like a premise to what you're saying, Omar. You're saying, well, maybe if the French didn't kill 1.5 million of the Algerians, they would have killed 1 million. There's almost the idea that you think that the French are just hell-bent on killing as many Algerians as possible. It feels like you're saying, just in the way that you just described it now. I mean, it's like you think that the Jews just want to go and kill Palestinians. That's like their hobby. I'm trying to figure out here like the parallels between what the Algerians did that might have been useful to do in Algeria with respect to the French, and what the Palestinians are doing today. And I think the Palestinians, certainly in the 60s and 70s, learned a lot from the lessons of the French. The problem that I see with the discussion over colonialism is that I think that Palestinians see the Jews as colonialists in Palestine. And while they might experience them this way, the experience of the Jews is not that of a colonialist. I think that while it might have made sense for Algerians to go and like blow themselves up in coffee shops or in ice cream parlors in Algeria to drive the French back to France, you're not going to do the same thing for the Jews in Judea. Where are they going to go? The Jews in Israel are going nowhere. It is a massive difference. But I think that so long as you're looking at the Algerian example as some precedent for what power and force and violent resistance is likely to get you, you're not going to get the same result. And there are other ways to decolonialize. And all I would ask you is how many millions of people died in Morocco and Tunisia in order to liberate those places. And I don't think that they had the same experience. I think their experience was much more of like a gradual transition.
I mean, even in Algeria, many millions of people were pro-French.
Let me just make my point. You didn't get my analogy, Adam. The analogy of the Algerians is not, oh, look, they fought back and it worked. This was not what I said. I said that when a colonial force, when an aggressor comes to, when aggressor wages war or like aggresses towards another people and they end up killing 1.5 million, no one puts a part of the blame on the
I got that much. I'm parsing what you're saying to 2 things. The first is about like the 1 million versus 1.5 million. My impression is that it's not like the French would have tried to go and kill 1 million people anyway. They didn't go and try to kill 1 million people anyway. But so that's where I think that analogy breaks down.
So you think if the Algerians did not resist, if the Algerians hadn't resisted the French, you think the French wouldn't kill like Algerians and do acts of terrorism and end up wherever, like doing atrocities to the Algerians? So, okay, are you blaming the Algerian resistance for the Algerian killed? Is this what you're doing?
No, I'm not blaming. All I'm saying is that if I were to sum up the experience of the Algerian resistance, I would have to say, okay, historically speaking, was that the best move? Was that the only way to free up, to liberate Algeria? I understand that it liberated Algeria. Was that a like? It's 1 million people, 1.5 million people. This is insane. Like this is an insane number.
That's good. Let's say that they took the second best choice, which is fighting back. The best choice is something else. Is there any rational person who puts the blame on them that 1.5 million people were killed?
I'm not interested in blame. I'm interested in not having these people die. I'm not blaming. I'm not playing games.
Right.
I brought this up. Just let me
It's 2 separate conversations. One is essentially like who's responsible. The other is that still the best approach? And I think that's the conversation I personally prefer. But I on that note, though, I would say that if Algerian civilians, French civilians were being targeted and killed, I could see a strong case for people saying that that's not a legitimate form of resistance. I don't think that that's like a controversial take.
You mean French?
Again?
You mean the French civilians getting killed? What did you say?
Yeah, in Algeria.
Oh, the French civilians in Algeria.
Yeah. I could see I could see a strong case against that not being okay, right? These are civilians, and you could say, okay, but they shouldn't be living there. But again, they were convinced that it's okay to live there from their government. I don't think people with the wrong again, the wrong view should get a death sentence or lose their human rights. So yeah, I could see a case that
And the
attacks
blame is
civilians.
completely on the French that they made the situation like that, right? We don't
Oh
say.
yeah, I mean, but that's if we want to choose. Like I keep having back and forths with people on Twitter and even friends about, like, they're saying, oh, but Hamas is responsible for all the deaths in Gaza because of October 7th. But generally responsibility can have more than one party. We have many instances of shared responsibility in society. It's not. It's
my
not
point.
like
That's my point. I think that's like, okay, I think that's not a good approach. We don't say the same thing when we talk about the Germans and the Namibians. We don't say the same thing when we talk about the Italians and the Libyans. We don't say, oh, it's maybe two sides, maybe. We don't do this. Why do we do that only for the Palestinians? Adar, did you listen to me?
Who does it, as in like say that Hamas is blameworthy? Is that what
Yeah,
you're saying?
the same thing that Adar just said, which is, no, it's more complicated, stuff like this. They have like two sides and you need to assign this stuff, this crap. We don't talk about like that when we speak about any other colonial, colonized.
But
The Jews are indigenous as well.
So
that's a really
I actually look at it from a different perspective. I think that the accountability on a person or a group should depend on, does accountability cause them to change their actions? I think that's generally how we should look at it. It's not about like this ideal of good, like virtuous versus not, right versus wrong. I think that's the wrong way to look at it. For example, if Palestinians or any oppressed group is engaging in a tactic that not only will not help them achieve their goals, but only cause them harm, and perhaps civilians on the other side harm, I think it's very legitimate to say, hey, wait a minute, I don't support that approach. I think it's a wrong approach, and there could even be accountability for taking such an approach.
Yeah.
Our expectation of a group should not be dependent on how much power that group has. It should be dependent on, are there actionable steps that group can take to change their situation, right? So, and let me give you an extreme example. If somebody were to come here, come and make the case that Jews could have acted in a way to avoid the Holocaust, and I feel like that was a compelling case, I would say, okay, great. So I think if there's something Jews actually could have done to avoid them being murdered in that way, then that should have been an expectation of them to preserve their life. I think that's perfectly legitimate.
You think so? I mean, I don't think anyone would be taken seriously if they were trying to assign some blame on the Jews.
But it's not about, again, it's not about blame. I think that's the wrong way to look at it.
Responsibility. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I think right. So I think if we let the international courts and even the court of public opinion, like maybe there's room for blame, but I'm just more interested in solutions. And I think the best way to achieve the solution is to see what both sides can do to bring us closer. And that should be our expectation of both sides.
Solutions
that'll bring us closer
to
peaceful
correct,
resolution.
Adar.
Yeah, I think the keys are. Yeah, I think the keys are.
We keep fixated on the whole concept of, oh, we need to resist, we need to fight. But in Sulha, to my understanding, and overall, we wanted to move forward, is that even if Palestinians resist, they're going to keep losing militarily. The only way to find a peaceful resolution that can give some sort of justice to Palestinians and to Israelis is through a peace and conversations and talking and understanding each other's sides, and not to always ban on the let's use violence to make our point heard. Because look, the Palestinians got more closer to independence through conversation and actual peace process than they did ever with violence.
That's not. I think that's not how it works. That's not how life works. If you lay down your arms and like take off your pants and give them your butt, that's gonna make the cost even lower and lower for the Israelis. They're gonna take more and more. This is how life works. They're not gonna have some compassion in their hearts. This is not how it works.
Omar, I think that that might not be how it works from now on out, but historically, I don't think that would have been the precise analysis of Israeli society. I think that was not. I think that the impression that is how Israelis are, I think is that a lot of
Netanyahu in 1997 and 1998 would have give probably independence to the Palestinians if none of the intifadas happened.
Oh, okay.
Even Netanyahu would have been pressured by the Israeli society to do so, and he was pressured to negotiate with the Palestinians. The thing is, if we always fixated on the resistance part on both sides, violence, whether it's the settled violence or the IDF or the PLO or Hamas, we're always going to keep gathering more violence instead of finding the actual solutions to the conflict that are only found through negotiation. Because again, peace is not who gets everything, because peace is not victory. Peace is understanding which side gets what and being able to live with it.
This
Israel
doesn't
can't
make sense.
Israel can't get everything. If we want
Let
peace
me
with the
just-
Palestinians, Israel cannot get everything.
Yeah,
And the
this-
Palestinians cannot get everything either. That's
Yeah.
obvious. It's peace.
That's why it doesn't make sense. You're telling me, oh no, the Palestinians, they must make the cost even lower and lower for the Israelis, and even lower so that the Israelis. That's what you're saying. Why not?
Omar,
No,
can
it's
I
not
ask
what
you?
I'm
Omar,
saying.
can I ask
Go
you?
ahead.
Guys,
Omar,
after this, so Adam, ask Omar the question. Omar can respond and include in there your final thoughts, and then everyone will have an opportunity for final thoughts, and we'll wrap it up. But I'm very happy to schedule a round 2 because this has been very interesting, and I think we could just keep going. So let's plan a round 2.
Omar, my question for you is, when you say no, the Israeli will just keep trying to get more and more. What do you think it is that they're trying to get?
Land, power, subjugation of Palestinians. What?
You think that's that? Like, you think the average Israeli, or is it like the Israeli, like the military industrial? Like, who is it that wakes up in the morning and is like, I really want to subjugate some more Palestinians today, and I want to take their land? Like,
Right now, the people who were democratically elected by the Israelis to represent them. Yeah, no.
I
Who were
don't
democratically
see
elected?
that at all. That is not even close to how I'm seeing it. But I'm just
No.
curious about how you seeing it.
Who's democratically elected in Israel to represent the Israelis? The government,
but-
go ahead. The cabinet
Yes.
meeting. Those people are exactly what you said.
I don't think that's even close to like interpreting their psychology. I think that's, look, you came on to the show and to kind of tell us about the misimpressions that we have of Gazan society, of which there are tons, and I believe that there are layers of misunderstanding and misimpression that are thick, and I think that it's also true on the other side.
I agree. Fair. I mean, fair. That's fair to tell me that, even though I a little bit disagree, but fair. Why we interpret it this way, because of the actions that we see, generally speaking. Like for me as a Palestinian, like when you tell me Yehudi, Jew, I think of the like that settler with those like long hair on the sides that is raiding the Al-Aqsa Mosque, or that is burning the trees there. That's what comes to my mind when you tell me a Jew. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not, a liberal sitting there in a cafe in Tel Aviv and that person is actually whatever doing. No, this like the people who are actually interacting with us are those people on the front. Again, like Adar like described them last time as like fringe. Those are in the forefront. They're forefront. They're literally in the center of the Israeli political landscape. Again, they were literally democratically elected to represent the Israelis.
For reasons that are as easy to misunderstand as the reasons are for Hamas getting elected democratically. Like, someone from the West can look. Can someone from the West can see, Palestinians, they vote on Hamas, it's because they're just all bloodthirsty and like Islamist expansionists. That would be a bad takeaway from those elections, as well this one from these last elections.
I see, but like, where the energy breaks is that Smotrich and Mingavi, those are actual irrational fundamentalists who are acting irrationally. Hamas is not.
Smotrich is the most pragmatic of the so-called irrational group.
Irrational as in, like Ben-Gvir would, for example.
If you look at Ben-Gvir, that's actually more irrational. Smotrich is way more pragmatic of his decisions. He obviously has a position.
Of course he's not.
He obviously he has a plan, and he obviously has an agenda.
Let me ask you a question. Let me just show you why that's wrong. Let me just show you where that's wrong. When he go and raids the Al-Aqsa Mosque, what's rational? What's of the benefit of Israel other than trying to ignite a third intifada? What the fuck is he doing there?
But tell me, based on rationality and logic, what is the problem of a person walking through anything anywhere? Right? If we put that small question, then what makes the irrational part of this actual question is that the Jews are fighting over a piece of rock in the middle of nowhere. Like that, why should it be a problem, right? That's what the question that a rational, quote unquote, person will ask. But the truth is, if you're fighting already for a rock, you're already fighting for something irrational. So whether it is the Palestinians or the Israelis,
that's what I think the Palestinians are not fighting for.
Real quick, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna wrap up this stream, and then we're gonna do an after party on Discord. It's not going to be on the Sulha server. It's going to be on the head-on server. We're actively building a community there. These community members will act as our earliest adopters, our beta testers, help us train the AI. So we're going to be doing more and more content there. So I'm going to drop a link. For those unfamiliar with Discord, it's a community platform you can join, and then there will be a voice and video chat there where anybody can join in. Omar and Altoids, I saw you in private chat express that you can stick around for that. Adam, are you able to join as well?
After running to the restroom, because I did not want to leave Omar while I had access to him.
Thank you.
Yes, no, fair. So there'll be a group called, you'll see a voice channel called After Party on the left-hand side. There's also a link in the description of the video, so you could, if you're watching this after the live, you could check out the link. We're doing multiple conversations a week already. We have 12 hours of conversations a week already on this Discord. So we'd love to have as many of you join as possible.
Also, if you're on the Discord, I can show you. It's Adar. Yes, that's and that revolution, I think, is precipitated by developments in AI that I would love to share on the Discord too. So if you're there, we can kind of.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we didn't do that here, but let's do that on Discord. And Omar, thanks so much for joining. Especially one Palestinian amongst 3 Israelis. I'm sure that's not easy, but I commend you for your courage and for taking an important stance here. And Altoids, thanks for joining as well. I'd love to do a round 2. And see you all in the after party.
Thank you, Adar.
Thank you, guys. See you soon.
Thank you.